I'm just gonna sit here until people join, so yeah. Let's just see who comes along. Hello. Oh, we've got a few people. Hello to anyone joining. How are you? How are you all doing? 4 concurrent viewers. Cool, blimey, world record. 7, oh my gosh. Hey, oh my god, we got holy crap. Hello, Romana? Oh shit, wait. No, yeah, I can say that, that's fine. Hello, Nathan. Hello, Samuel? Bunny in the box. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? How's Flux for everyone? What does everyone think of Flux? How am I doing? I'm okay. I've been, at work. That's why I haven't, uploaded for, quite some time. Because I got a job, and now I have no time. What's up, Tom Johnson? And yes, I would say it has been chiptastic. It has that Chibnall mark of quality. So some people saying Eldridge? Michael Eldridge says, "Hey Jack, man, these episodes are rough." Which is interesting because I really haven't seen a huge amount of negative sentiment towards this part of the show just yet. I've seen a lot of positive takes on it, which is interesting, though I think understandable. I think I understand why people are enjoying it. And I'm not here to be like a spoil sport, but I don't think it's the leap in quality that people make it out to be. It still feels meh to me, have been watching it, but it still feels too Chibnall-like. So yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand that. I'm enjoying it way more than expected. To the second episode is better than any of the other Chib episodes. Maybe I'll have to rewatch War of the Sontarans, because and I guess it depends what kind of in what frame, what kind of how you're analyzing that, or at least how, because I thought War of the Sontarans was fine, but not no, it's the thing about this era of the show is that it's entertaining, I think, is what it has managed to achieve. It's reached the level of, I'm not bored or frustrated, I'm more kind of entertained, curious, but at the same time, I'm finding myself being taken out of it quite regularly still by, various things, just little things that are noticeable to me. Isn't Nish Kernar meant to join the cast? Why do I recognise that name? Hello, Scotty Watty. Why does everyone want to shag War of the Sontarans? Honestly, I think it's because the Sontarans are back in a form they've not, as an antagonistical force. They've not been for years. I think it's because they look a bit more like the classic ones. I think it's because they debatably act a bit more like the classic ones, though I have my own feelings on that. And because it gives you kind of mindless fun that I think at this point, the low of the past 2 seasons is kind of almost palate cleansed everyone to the extent that they're oh wow, the show isn't unbearable now. This is amazing, when all it's done is reach the level of sort of mediocre but fun, if that makes sense. I'm enjoying the supporting cast. They're knocking out of the park. It's the regular characters, Yaz and the Doc, who still seem 2-dimensional. I would agree with that. My least favorite characters currently are Yaz and the Doctor. Yaz especially. She's just she's gone from being a non-entity to now just annoying, which is kind of mean. But I just don't think what they're trying to do with her character is. I don't think there's enough there to execute the idea that I can see they're trying to do. But Dan, I like Dan and John Bishop, though I think John Bishop feels like he's playing, well, it kind of feels like he's in a parody, which I don't mind exactly, but it's not it's not like a sort of believable weighty performance, which you don't necessarily need, but it's very, very much comedic, very much wacky, over the top, kind of big in scale, low in stakes, I want to say. And yeah, what I mean, I guess the other things are kind of interesting, like the dog guy's kind of interesting. He's alright. And I kind of like the campiness of the what are they called? The Crystal Gem people. What are they? Like, well, one's called Swarm and one's called Azure, aren't they? What are they? Are they the Ravagers? Is that what they are called? Feels to me like it's the most rushed and has issues of both last two seasons. I do think this one was definitely rushed or affected in obviously COVID happens, but the fact that it was chopped down to 6 episodes, I think, has kind of contributed to what this has become, which is you've got a lot of the same typical Chibnall hallmarks there, but it's almost moving so fast and chucking so much at you and kind of having a lot more fun with itself that I think it is like it gets away with its issues a lot more to like a first watch, or well, not even for a first watch, because War of the Sontarans massively took me out with the solution to that plot, because I just didn't understand. At the start they show the Sontaran Mary Seacole Sontaran, and it's like, Mary Seacole, oh, this Sontaran, I've been looking at it, it's sleeping every 27 hours for 7 minutes or something like that. And I was like, okay, noted, that went into my brain. And then by the end, the doctor's like, oh yeah, they go to sleep, they go to refuel on their ship, so if we pull out the tubes and stop their gases that make the Earth's atmosphere breathable to them, will defeat them. And I'm like, okay, but wait, what? Like, if that's going to cause them to suffocate, then what was the issue with the other Sontaran that had been away from the ship for ages? Like, how quick does the gas thing happen? How much of an issue? Like, all these things just aren't kind of really defined in the script, and I didn't go through the script going, now let me find an issue. The minute that was brought up as a solution, my mind went, well, that doesn't make sense to me based on the information the story gave me before. And then I was taken out of it, and I kept waiting for them to clarify, and the doctor just kept saying, your supplies, and I was like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why this is posing a threat against the Sontarans. And I think I suggested in like a tweet that they literally could have had like the plan be that the doctor secretly disconnects their supplies, whatever the supplies do for them, and that then leads to when they're having the fight, the Sontarans are defeated by like because isn't there going to be like another face-off? Like the Sontarans have like screwed up all the soldiers, like all the human soldiers. Wasn't there then going to be like another scuffle? Like you know, you want that kind of underdog feeling. You want that like, oh fuck, the big imposing like empire is coming to take it, and like the doctor's like, now we're gonna be clever, and having screwed up their like supply, she then humiliates the Sontarans with some kind of like really farcical defeat where it's like, I mean, people might not like it because it's not serious enough, I don't know, but then actually no, the whole debate recently has been that the Sontarans are allowed to be silly, so like have their war pride be undermined by like a really humiliating defeat that isn't based on like tactical skill, but like the Sontarans being caught out by like really dumb non-lethal means, to the point that the doctor's like, I mean, do you really want to admit to your whole rest of your fleet that you got wiped out by a couple, like a handful of people? And they're like, fuck. And maybe they introduce something else that, like, you know, a more urgent reason for them to leave. I mean, you know, the general guy could still blow them up if you want to do the whole Christmas invasion thing, but like, I don't know. It's just a really weird solution. It all happens so fast. Yeah, sorry, I went off on that for a bit. What were we talking about? Expected it to be more like a classic serial, just bigger in scope, more locations. Turned out to be a bit more episodic with stronger connective tissue. Wait, what? Hang on, what are you... I'm not quite sure if I get what you're saying, because you say more like a classic serial, just bigger in scope / more locations, a bit more episode. Oh no, sorry, I do get what you're saying. Yeah, it is. I guess I didn't really know what to expect from this series. I think I expected more of a casual introduction to things rather than throwing literally every thread into the first episode, it seems. The dog guy is a treasure, down with the wok is entertaining. You know, these are things that are fun. Like, I enjoy those things, even though it's like a very different kind of Who, I suppose. This is Jodie Whittaker's Trial of a Time Lord season. God, it literally is. It literally, because even the, obviously for Colin's first season, they went, we're going to do double length episodes, which meant we had half the episode count. For the next season, they went back to 25-minute episodes, but they didn't switch the episode count back up again, meaning that for Colin's last season and the rest of Sylv's, we were getting half the number of episodes as before, only like 13 a season or something, which is just tiny. Like, it makes me sad that it's so quick and easy to get through Sylv's stuff, because I wish I could watch more. I mean, you know, obviously these days it's we get 6, but the whole Sontaran gas idea was stupid. They didn't have to recharge during the whole Sontaran thingy. Yeah, because that one was built around some kind of gas thing. I don't know. Like, it's whether or not people, because this is the thing, when you bring up an issue like that, people then infer information that's like, oh well, maybe the Sontarans did it. It's like, well, the issue is that it's like, the issue isn't that you have to take a moment to like create an excuse. The issue is this was something that the minute it happened, I went, that doesn't make sense. My immersion has like been lost, and that's why it was a flaw for me. I wasn't wrapped up in the storytelling so much that a detail like that flew over my head, which it can do with many stories. Like, I don't know, Back to the Future, if you want to like nitpick that, you can be like, how does any of it make any sense, because it's time travel? And so it's stuff like, how would Marty come back to his life? Like, he would have a life that's like completely different, that he doesn't know, and a history he doesn't remember, and how would that even work? And you know, that's quite creepy, if anything. But I think it's something that, you know, the movie's, it's not going to like dwell on. YouTube is not, wait, what the fuck is this? YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Oh, well, I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. But yeah. Hello, Tharies. Sorry, just spotted that. Nice to see you. I hope you guys can still hear me. Turn up the saturations, explosions, and hope for the best. I mean, yeah, it is a bit. What is the consensus on Vinder? I really don't know what to make of him at this point. It's like, he's there. There are some bits interesting to him, but I just don't feel like I've seen him do enough yet to have like a clear idea of his character. I may need to rewatch, you know, I've not studied these episodes. I've watched them once and listened to them again whilst at work, so I could like really focus on like dialogue and stuff. And also so that, you know, I can continue working and not be watching Doctor Who at work. I can't look past how they've written Yaz to know everything. Don't see how that was earned. So, I mean, yeah, I think I get what you're saying. I do have some issues with how it's kind of surface level things, like, you know, people will be like, oh wow, Yaz is piloting the TARDIS now, and it's like, it's cool, but it doesn't feel like kind of like a natural part of this ongoing character. It's just kind of like, oh, she can do that now. It's not a problem that she can do that, but it's just kind of being introduced out of nowhere. And I know there's an implication that there has been time, but it's just a shame to have more character development happening off screen. And we've been basically plonked into the middle of their conflict, already ignited, of Yaz being like, oh, the Doctor, you're hiding something from me, I'm fed up with you now, which only really started becoming a problem at like Revolution of the Daleks, was like the first time she was angry with the Doctor, and it's more like she was angry because the Doctor... Why was she angry with the Doctor? Like, she was angry because the Doctor got out okay, and was like, oh yeah, and just kind of carried on as normal. She's like, we've been worried about you, but like, I don't even entirely understand. Obviously, like, I can understand an irrational emotional response to like, we've not seen you for ages, and then you're waltzing back in, but it's like, it happens literally after she's arrived. It's not like the doctor comes back and Yaz is like, it bubbles inside her until she's like, did you not care? Like, you've been gone for ages and you're waltzing back into our lives. Like nothing's wrong. Like, why do you think you have the right to do that? And instead it's like, she's just, we were worried about you. And it's like, it's not the doctor's fault. She's literally just gotten out. Like, anyway, stuff like what would the doctor do that she wrote on her hand, which is just like, it's just like painful, because it's like, this is stuff that we should have had at like the start of her character. And, you know, it's it could be an arc. I mean, obviously this is only the second episode of Flux, and so I guess the arc is meant to be that it's like, being like the doctor is, it's gonna be good, but then it's gonna backfire on her, it's gonna be a bit bad. But like, you know, it's the kind of thing where you ideally should probably take place over a longer time. There should be something that happened earlier rather than nothing, followed by, oh, I was depressed once and I got 50p, followed by, oh, I want a doctor, can I go look at this thing in there? And then she gets teleported onto like the submarine in Praxius, and she's like, what? Oh, I think I found a spaceship. And then she hasn't. She's like, oh, that's that. So Yaz's character has been like reminding people she's a police officer, having mental health problems once, that's kind of resolved now. That happened already, that character arc. It's showing a tiny bit of curiosity and independence, and on one occasion doing something like about that, and then getting disillusioned with the doctor, but at the same time obsessed with the doctor. I don't even know really what her relationship with the doctor is exactly meant to be, like, because I don't feel like they've shown enough of the doctor being like a positive influence in her life that actually changes her life, and being more like the doctor makes things better for her. That's kind of how this sort of character arc should work. Like, we should see the benefits and then the consequences, and, you know, it gives you questions to think about, whereas this is very much doing the, like, it signposts the clear parts of the arc without actually filling in the groundwork. It's Yaz going, you're like the best person I've ever met, in like Arachnids or whatever the fuck she says there, or Fugitive, or whatever she says, like, and, you know, her saying you're like the best person I ever met doesn't mean that Yaz has changed her life. Yaz's life has changed. We don't feel that change. She says it, but we don't feel it. So it's like, there's not like an investment. Like, you don't care about her journey. And I think people only care about her because they kind of, again, I'm not trying to like put words in people's mouths, but I think they're like, they literally forcibly like project or kind of like force themselves to connect. Like, it's like, oh, this is the companion. It's the, I love Doctor Who. I love the Doctor, and I love the ex-companion or whatever. So it's like, because this is the new companion, I love. And then it's sort of like, they're viewed as like this weird like token. It's like they're viewed as like this weird object of affection, rather than like, you know, you watch a character, you go, oh, I find this character engaging, or I invest in this character's journey, or even just, oh, this character kind of entertains me. It feels like they feel like they should care about her because she's the companion, and then the show has kind of very basically gone, here are some basic things you might care about, but it's up to you to figure it out. So I might be losing, I'm talking about a lot here, so I might be losing the point I'm trying to make, but it's just frustrating. I don't know, I've missed a lot of chat, sorry, what's going on? It was a bit strange for the Doctor to scold the commander for belonging to the Centaurans, right after telling Dan to do the same thing. I mean, yeah, that whole ended, tonal whiplash of like one set of Sontaran ships blowing up in a big Christmas invasion style thing, and then the other set, Dan drives the ship into them like bloody 911s, the whole Sontaran, and it's just so, like, it's funny, but like, Jesus Christ, there's a bad set of like tonal whiplash there. Bonk them on the valve to defeat them isn't new. It's stupid, but it's always been the Achilles heel for the Sontarans. I think the bonking, I don't know if we've ever seen as much probic vent bonking. Oh, that's an awful probic vent bonking. I don't think we've seen as much probic vent bonking as in this story. Feel free to correct me. I know that it doesn't like a Sontaran fall over like a sun chair in like the Two Doctors or like the Invasion of Time or something, but yeah, it really felt like they carried the probic vent Achilles heel to like the extreme in that story, in a way that I think kind of sadly undermines the Sontarans a bit. Like, it's, you know, something like the Time Warrior, everyone, you know, says Lynx is the best Sontaran and they've never topped him. And yeah, I really see why, because the more and more Sontaran stories I see or revisit, the more and more I'm like, he's such a fascinating little character, like Lynx. Like, the way he's written, the way he bounces off the other characters and like conflicts, he's so brusque and aggressive, and the comedy comes from like how he interacts with the people of that time as an alien, and like his juxtaposition of being this warrior-like single-minded alien, not the Sontaran going, I wanted to ride a horse, because and that's a bit more, it's like, I don't hate that line, but I do feel like they were made a lot more into the kind of the pompous, silly type Sontarans, a lot more new series-esque than the kind of the gruff, aggressive classic series ones. Which, you know, I'm not against silliness in Doctor Who, but I think Time Warrior has like, it doesn't have like two probic vent scenes that I can think of. Like, there's the bit at the end with the arrow, and there's the bit where someone helps. Oh, there's the bit, isn't like the scientist guy who's like he's like created a little eyeglass from like monocle. Doesn't he hit the Sontaran over the head? Whereas this one, it was like, it felt like constantly he was, unless I'm just misremembering it just felt like a very low stakes episode. You know, we set up clear stakes of, if you sneak into the Sontaran ship camp, you will be executed, and we see all those spies get executed, or whether or not they were spies, could have just been innocent people. But Dan still manages to waltz in with a wok, and even does like, oh, you know, your chief, your master's over there, talk to him. In, you know, very goofy, like, a lot of people argue like, oh, the point of the probic vent, the reason why they keep that floor is that it forces them to like face their enemy at all time. I guess that Sontaran forgot at that moment. He was like, oh, maybe my chief has got something to do with this. It's a fun, funny scene. I like John Bishop's kind of weird delivery and the way the Sontaran goes down. Like, he goes down, he hits that floor. It's fun, but there's no stakes in that scene. There's no suspense. There's no tension. It's fine as a bit of fun, but I don't think this is the best the Sontarans have been like showcased. Like, this makes the Sontarans out to be pretty naff. Like, this is like a Silver Nemesis level, I think. And, you know, Silver Nemesis is, holy shit, that's what it is. Flux is just like Silver Nemesis, but 6 episodes long. It's like loads of key players, some weird kind of like ancient origin shit, whatever the stuff that you don't understand going on. Tons of running around, tons of mindless action, a companion like running around taking out loads of villains with their one weakness that's now at the point where it feels like a bit of a joke, a bit of like a over the top meme. Yeah, I think that's what Flux is. Flux is just Silver Nemesis for 6 episodes. Wow. I thought Vinda was going to be a main companion, but it's looks like he's a 2D chibi side character. Yeah, I haven't seen. I don't know if he's going to come. I guess he might be in the next episode more, but it is odd. It also fits with Who as well. Some of the enemies were very scary, but then turn silly once their weakness is discovered. Weeping Angels fit this mold too. I mean, which episode would you say specifically makes the Weeping Angels silly? I'll say I've not watched Angels Take Manhattan, I think, since it came out, which is like nearly 10 years. But as well, it's one of those things where it's like, it depends what you're evaluating. It depends, obviously, to some extent, personal preference. It depends how seriously you want elements to be taken. If you'd prefer the Sontarans to be an over-the-top, goofy, jokey race, then yeah, it's fine, I think those scenes are fun. But I think the issue with those scenes is that it's like, I like Dan, but I don't care about him as a character yet. I would only care about him if I inferred/projected things onto his character, because so far I don't feel like I've been given like a journey or a goal or a motivation for him. And whilst there's interesting stuff that could have been explored, it's very on the nose, but this guy who's really, really nice and doesn't want to accept help, ending up in a situation in which he's forced into accepting help. Actually, no, he just excels. He just he takes to it like a duck to water. He runs right in there. His parents have already figured out how to defeat Sontarans thanks to a chat in the pub, and he takes down the whole fleet. It's only in Carvanista only turns up at the end in a slight kind of convenient. It's not really Deus Ex Machina, but you know what I mean. And this is all in his second episode. And originally when I was going to do a video comparing companions, I was going to make the point that Sarah Jane does so much in her first story compared to like the modern companions. But like with Sarah Jane, it at least takes time to build all the necessary elements and like introduce stakes and peril. Like she doesn't just get taken away into time and just flawlessly cope. She isn't just like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing here. I'm gonna take out the Sontaran. Instead, she's confused. She's like, what's going on? We're showing that she's known to be a bit of a sneaky and kind of mischievous character anyway, because she lies using her aunt's identity to get into the unit thing because she wants to know what the fuck's going on. Then she sneaks aboard the Doctor's ship, which means then she gets sent back in time. She thinks at first she hasn't gone back in time at all, and we get a lot of fun of her interplaying off of the people of the time, which is very understandable and believable based on what we know of her as a personality. Whereas we don't really get enough time with Dan, who is then his home is invaded by a dog and is sent up into a spaceship. Like it's fun, it's funny, but I'm not like. It's a lot for him to take in, and he does it very well, and therefore just like the emotional stakes and the danger in those fun scenes, it's a bit I enjoy, it's fun, but it's not like it doesn't grab you, if that makes sense. Anyway, what else are we looking at? That bit in Revolution felt so forced on its start. Yeah, it did. I think I've probably missed a lot of chat here. Let's see. A huge design flaw that crashing their spaceship undoes their entire invasion plan. Yeah, I don't even really get what happened there. Like, I understand Dan drove the thing into all the ships, but did that, like, reset time, him doing that? Did that happen? To be fair, Clara wasn't made into a better person by the Doctor and just became less empathetic, more callous. Trying to be the Doctor led to her downfall. Yeah, my point is that with the whole Yaz thing, isn't that the Doctor should make her into a better person. It should be that there should be an emotional connection to this thing. It should be that we see why she goes down the path of being more like the Doctor at first and how it's advantageous, and how ultimately it comes back to bite her, and that it's like a dangerous path, which I think it's hard with Clara because obviously she has the whole. There's 7B Clara, and then you have Series 8 Clara, and I think throughout that season you do get that hint of sort of Clara. Yeah, I think that's mainly the season where they develop Clara becoming more like the Doctor, and there are situations in which she's put in which, you know, she does have to act a bit more like the Doctor, and I don't think it's necessarily perfectly executed. I think Series 8 has it's got a lot of character stuff going on, and not all of it I love, but I am coming to appreciate more over time. But I'm just kind of thinking traditionally, and like, if you want me to care about Yaz because I have like an emotional investment in her, then we need to explore these character beats rather than assuming I'll like Yaz because she's the Doctor's companion and going, look what's happening to Yaz now, she's becoming more like the Doctor, and just showing that really blatantly by like her writing, what would the Doctor do on her hands, like, I just don't think it's how you build an engaging character. And it's like there's this assumed you'll like Yaz because she's there kind of thing almost, and I think a lot of people do like Yaz because she's there. Like, I'm sorry, I don't personally see what's so endearing about Yaz as a character, in all honesty. Anyway, let's have a little look. Which, because Doctor's moral compass is on a perpetual rinse cycle. That's quite funny. Didn't Chibnall have a fetish sex robot episode, or am I misremembering? That might be like a Torchwood thing, I think. I love how the Doctor's arrest had no repercussions so far this series. Literally just a shock value cliffhanger by this point. Makes me think any build-up in Flux will have zero payoff. This is the ultimate fear I have. And maybe they will revisit this. I don't know. Maybe it's going to come back in like the centenary special. But I think what's happened, or at least what it looks like to me, is prior to Flux, I remember I was honestly getting a bit sick of like Chibnall era negativity. Like, I still felt quite strongly about it, but I think like I had burnt myself out doing my videos, as well as like other stuff going on. And I kind of became more active on Twitter around then, which then meant I was seeing a lot of stuff every day, comments from, you know, people sharing their opinions. And I think just from the complete lack of any new Doctor Who stuff for so long, for like since like the 1st of January, basically, and a long time before that, it meant that people were kind of like, just the same conversations kept happening. It felt like people were just looking for anything to nitpick. And I was like, honestly, at this point, like, just kind of like bored of it. And then the news that RTD was coming back came along, and I'm like, that's kind of nuts. And that almost made me feel kind of bad for Chibs, because I was like, oh shit, like this almost makes it feel like, you know, if they've had to bring in Russell, it almost makes it feel like there has been something behind the scenes, or maybe Chibs had been let go or something like that. And I kind of got to the point where I was almost like, I feel like I can cool down. Like, I feel like people will accept that like the Chibnall era has had some pretty bad issues, and we've discussed them to death, and now perhaps we can just kind of like, we can move on, you know, we'll see what Flux is like. And then Flux started airing, and everyone's been I've seen so much positivity from it, and not just like, oh, that was quite good, or like, oh, I think this is quite a fun episode. It's people being like, that was amazing, or people saying this is Doctor Who. People saying this is the best Doctor Who's been in since bloody blah blah blah, or like, oh, you know, this is the best Sontarans. These are the best villains we've had since the 80s, like the Ravages people, and loads of very big extreme comments, and that then leads people to kind of like get really condescending about criticism towards the past, like you know, people were saying stuff like, I reckon, you know, the fact that this new format works, this like serialized format, I think that makes me think that the only reason people didn't like Ranscott Av Kolos is because they wanted a big series finale, and that's not what it was. It's like, well, no. I think the reason why people don't like Ranscott is because it's like really poorly paced. It has tons of dull expositional dialogue. It's boringly shot. it's poorly structured and relies on just like a complete kind of lack of like stakes. Like there are some stakes, but then they're also really vaguely defined stakes. I never feel like our character's in danger. The Earth is technically in danger, but all you see is like a weird red laser thing, like is sucking it away. And then there's the whole, I guess, like Ryan and Graham thing, which is like serviceable at best. Like Ranscore is a dull story that's like it's very lazily and kind of sloppily structured. It's not considered bad because people wanted a big bombastic finale and they got something smaller. I mean, if anything, that's a much more of a Hellbent type discussion, which I'll have to revisit Hellbent, but you know, that's one where some people really love it, a lot of people dislike it, and I think some of that dislike can come from what people wanted it to be versus what it ended up being, as well as other decisions. I'm not saying that's the only reason why people dislike it, but I do think that contributed to it. And I think what's almost happened now is that at the time of Series 11 airing, at the time of Series 12 airing, I think we did get a lot of people would go, oh, that was a particularly bad episode, but a lot of people going, oh, that was a really good, oh no, that was all right, or like, oh, that was pretty good. And the discourse always felt like it weighed more towards the no, it's okay, or oh, it's not that bad, or it's like, well, there are some problems, but people are just reacting to blah, blah, blah. And kind of criticism being, like, pushed away and swept under as, like, a no, like, dismissed. And I think it's just happened again. I feel like the amount of time between the end of Series 12, which, you know, was, like, bloody March 2020 at that point, the very start of March, all the way to Flux beginning, I think it's caused this, like, because Flux is it's new, it's doing new things, it has got some improvements. I think that's causing people to just get really, like, hyperbolic with it and really, really excited. And, you know, I don't want to take away from someone who feels excited and happy because they're enjoying a show. But I do think the issue comes with when the discourse and the discussion from it just gets so one-sided and so messy and so kind of dismissive. Which is, you know, because I was annoyed when the discourse was overwhelmingly negative as well, and now the discourse has turned around to be overwhelmingly positive, to the point that, like, weird false equivalencies are being used all the time. It's like every time a new Flux episode comes out, there's like a debate on Twitter about, I mean, you know, most recently it was about plot armor and Sontarans shooting straight and all these kind of nitty gritty bits, and it's like, Christ almighty, you know, people get really condescending, and it's like people were comparing like the shot with Troughton from The Invasion, which is like a completely different story entirely, in which that scene takes place in an entirely different context with entirely different stakes, to this bit in the Sontarans. And it's like, I get what they're trying to say. I get they're trying to do, like, you know, your argument is, if they're just simply trying to say that the argument that the Sontarans miss shots, therefore that's bad, isn't a good enough argument. But I think people who are complaining that, because, you know, my immersion was a bit like, that's a bit odd, because you saw all those Sontarans, there's a line that I missed where apparently they're like split up or something. The two follow them, and then they're taken out by his parents who just show up. Like, why did his parents know they were going to be there? And this is where the other question comes in. All these things of why did X know why Y was going to be there, and how did this, and oh, is this going to get... I don't know how much of this will actually be answered. And the excuse right now is always, oh, it's going to be tied up in the finale. The excuse I've been hearing for years with Chibnall is, oh, it's an ongoing story. Like, you know, when this... If this... Oh yeah, okay, it's come back. If this potentially becomes another Series 12, a Series 11, even, either of those, like, in which people expect it to be going somewhere more than it is, or expect it to answer certain questions, and then it just doesn't, I do wonder, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it went that way, and I then do wonder if that will then cause people to, like, look back on this less favourably, when the dust has settled and people go, actually, you know, what content is there really to digest in these? And I think it's so tricky because it's like that's when you're trying to evaluate like the artistic critical merit of something versus the pure entertainment value of something kind of thing. And it's like Doctor Who Flux so far has been, I think, the perfect embodiment of turn your brain off entertainment. Because to be honest, if you just let it throw shit at your face, all this crazy stuff, you let yourself kind of go like, gosh, yeah, what are these strange questions, strange plot threads that we're not getting answers to yet. This is really, I just want to know what's going on. It's really good at getting that itch of me like, oh, what is going on? What's this guy? And I think it's really good at coming up with ideas that are so bizarre and out there and alien that I kind of can't help but be a little immersed in them at times. Like, it's really goofy, but there's all the weird stuff with like the planet called Time and like the weird diamond-shaped like robot people, like priests or whatever they were, and the all those people stood in like the circle that were like the controllers of time. Like, that stuff's all so weird, and I kind of like it because it is really weird and out there. But at the same time, the actual storytelling and the structure and the plotting so far has been very surface level. It's been very thin. It's been very kind of goofy and not taking itself seriously. And I think it's kind of debatable, how good can you really call something if it kind of gets away with it by like, I guess basically just it's much more of a kind of disposable experience. Like, I wonder how well will Flux hold up on a rewatch? Will it be rewatchable when certain threads perhaps don't go somewhere or certain reveals are badly handled? We don't know if they will, but I remember when Fugitive happened, and it was this moment of kind of like, this has changed kind of, well, I mean, I guess it goes back to Spyfall Eve. It's like, first of all, you've got like, oh shit, Gallifrey's gone. And before I have a chance to go, why the fuck would he make that decision? That's a really uncreative decision. It's that thing of, oh shit, this has changed something, and there's a reason why the Master's done something. That, oh shit, we're going to find, this is going to build to something. And then you get to Fugitive, and it's like, oh shit, now the opening, oh, wait, what? Now there's another Doctor who's hidden, what, and how's this gonna, and something to do with the Division, and so by the time we then get to like the kind of the end of Haunting of Villa Diodati, going into Ascension, going into Timeless Children, there was this kind of thing of like, where is this all heading? There's like a futuristic cyber war, there's like a gate, but then the way all of that is handled is just like a really underwhelming, exposition-laden, poorly structured episode, full of contrivances that then makes you look back and go, wait, there's been a complete lack of like emotional stakes and like conflict in the storytelling so far. Aside from all those telegraph scenes where Yaz is like, oh, you're in a mardy mood, or the companions are like, where do you go when you go away and you're sad? And we're like, when did this happen? It's just so bizarre, and it's like, we've already gone through that thing of expecting a story to, a story establishing ideas that could unfold, not really doing much of them, and then realizing that was kind of the end of the story. Unless people, I don't know, unless all this is still to pay off in, I mean, yeah, it is still to be revealed, but how satisfying is it going to be? How long can we keep just saying, when they've revealed it will look good, because it's like, at least this time they're more interesting, but Christ. Let's see. So what's the chat saying? Sorry, I realize, I don't know why, but my stream is being awful right now. It keeps cutting out apparently, and I've no idea why, because there's like no one else in the house. Like, the internet, my connection should be fine. So sorry about that. Maybe the Weeping Angel episode would be good. Who knows? I know that my some of my family mentioned, we know the Weeping Angel's back, so we're going to tune in for the Weeping Angel episodes, see what that's like. And I'm like, okay, just be warned though, it's it's like an ongoing story thing, so you could end up watching and being really confused. And I use the phrase, it's a bit Moffat-y, because I know that they don't really like the big storylines of Moffat. They think that it was too confusing, and so I kind of want to be like, just be warned, you might be in for a bit of a confusing, you're going to be dropped into the middle of something. Anyway, yeah, what are people saying? Blink, for example, was always scary, but when you sat and thought about it, you'd wear mirrored sunglasses, easily defeated villains. I guess I never thought of that. That's quite funny. I guess it's like that's a question of how the Weeping Angels work. I suppose at that point, it's like because all the thing is, the sunglasses, it's like mirrored sunglasses are going to be blocking some of the light and reflecting some of the light and letting some of it through. But like, how much does the Weeping Angel, does it know you're looking at it due to like light? Like, how does it? I mean, I guess that's the thing, is that it doesn't. It's a villain that conceptually doesn't make sense the more you think about it, which kind of, I guess is one reason why they probably shouldn't be used too much. But it's also kind of, I think the point is that you kind of, yeah, it's the storytelling's good enough that you don't, yeah. Well, yeah, that's what you say. It was always scary. Like, the storytelling's good enough that it's just not something you think of. Because, there probably is a way they'd get around that. I don't know. Let's see, what have we got? Every Doctor Who VOTW eventually gets turned into an overused, goofy character / race. Is that like VOTW, like villain? Like, what are you? What does that stand for, please? What have we got? Scouse or Yorkshire? What? Dan or me or? Don't know. Well, it's like a whole conversation going on about, personally, I think they should retire or destroy the Sonic. It's kind of become overused like it was in the 3rd and 4th Doctor's era, but they probably won't do that because they can sell it as merch. I think I feel the same way. Like, it's become so heavily relied upon, and I know there are, like, people have done tally charts where they've added up the number of Sonic uses, and they're like, see, Matt Smith used it the most, it's not that bad, and it's like, I would rather that the Sonic hasn't become such this weird, it's used all the time, it's always scanning, it's always like, it's treated as this weird magic wand. At the same time, I get why they have to, because it's like a part of the show's identity, it's part of the merchandise, it's something you can sell. If the Doctor isn't using it, the kids are less likely to use it. But, yeah, oh, I don't think it's you. I saw a stream this morning that kept cutting out. That's interesting. So it could be that, yeah, might not be me then. Oh, sorry, villain of the week. Thank you everyone for clarifying. Yes, I mean, I think, yeah, like, overusing a villain, it will happen. I'm still of the opinion that there are still stories that could be told with Daleks or Cybermen. And I'm of the opinion that you don't necessarily have to find, like, a really completely new dimension to explore with the people like the Cybermen or the Daleks. I think telling just like a tense, well-written story that doesn't necessarily have like the most thematic depth is perfectly acceptable for those characters. And I think people keep saying Chibnall's treatment of the modern villains is so good. Not that Chibnall's treatment of classic villains, I should say, which I just really don't agree with. I think the Cybermen were mostly just felt like, again, generic robot numbers. They didn't really feel like an interesting force or concept. The only thing that was there was the obviously the cyber guy. What was he called? Ashad, who was then diminished massively by his second episode and shrunken to like basically inconsequential in his third. So he's, it's hardly the best treatment. I mean, their plan was to also just to be robots again, and it's a bit like, I just want, I want something different. Like, is it different from Stompy Cyberboys? I would like a Cyberman story that, it doesn't have to find some crazy new dimension to explore with them, but it'd be nice to see them go back to being creepy, ruthless, kind of cold killers. Like in the Moon Base, when they're like, they raise the point that someone will die if they make him do something, like in a few hours, and they're like, oh, how many hours? And they say, and they're like, oh, it doesn't matter, our purpose will be completed by them. That kind of like it. Just this weird, like, merciless, emotionless, logical, but that kind of loss of humanity. Those are already themes you can explore that have been explored, that almost debatably haven't been explored enough with Cybermen, but, like, I think they're just so, they are just cool as well, and it's like, just do something with them that isn't what we've had for years now. And it doesn't have to be a big, because as much as I like some of the ideas behind the cyber thing, the cyber guy, Shad, it's like, he's bogged down by so many, like, the story he does appear in, all the stories he appears in, it's just so bogged down that, like, I don't even like him that much. It just doesn't, like, I get it, there's some cool concept there, but is it explored well enough? Probably not. Again, people saying the Sontarans have been handled, it's like, I guess in comparison to the RTD camp, and then, like, the Stephen Moffat, like, comedic punchline, yes, yeah, I guess this is one of the better renditions of the Sontarans in the modern era, but I still wouldn't say it's like dramatically that different. Like, there is some good stuff in there, but they're still a completely different feeling race to what they were, especially in their first appearance. And then the Daleks especially just irritates me because, resolution, it has a cool gimmick behind it. The idea of the Dalek coming out of its shell, the idea of the Dalek controlling someone, which I do have problems with, because I think it's a bit like, how the fuck does that even, I get a Dalek controlling, like, a metallic casing that was designed to house and, like, keep it alive. How does a Dalek control a human? And the explanation given seems to be that, oh, it's a recon scout Dalek, so it has special abilities, which basically is just like, oh, it's got a bunch of bullshit it can do. And then, like, the suit it builds for itself is just, it feels like it's totally conflicted what it wants to do with that. It's like, okay, it's built itself a rickety little Dalek, interesting. But it can fly about, it's got rocket launchers built into the fucking Dalek bumps. It shoots at, like, a completely ridiculous, over-the-top, rapid rate, taking out all those soldiers in that, like, one scene where it just, like, stops to kill a bunch of army people. It's, like, and then it's, like, you compare that scene to, like, Dalek, where you have the wonderful scene where the Dalek is creepy, it's silent, it's calculating, it's smart. It takes down an entire room of soldiers using 3 shots. It turns on, it hits the fire alarm, turns on the sprinklers, 1 shot to take down everyone on the floor, 1 shot to take down everyone on the balcony. It's just like, that's scary. And there's actual stakes in that because the Dalek is in pursuit of someone we care about. In Resolution, there's very little stakes because it's like, no one we really care about is actually in danger of the Dalek. There's just a bunch of nameless soldiers that get slaughtered, and I don't feel like I don't feel the Dalek feels particularly creepy or manipulative. It's just kind of like super powered baddie squid. And then I think when you get to Revolution of the Daleks, it's even worse. Because both, you can make an argument. I think in Resolution or Revolution, they could have done something with the idea of the Daleks were originally a fascist allegory. You can even talk about how, like, ideas and mindsets of those kinds of things can take control of someone and quite literally influence their actions. Like, if they let themselves believe and buy into that, it will dictate how they, like, you've got a potential, if you really want to do some, like, thematic storytelling bullshit, you can do that, but they don't. It's just got superpowers. And in Revolution especially, it annoys me how there's just like, there's no plot to there's no like, very little like, you've got all that stuff with like the Leo character who just isn't a character. He clones the Dalek just because, and then the Dalek doesn't have a character. He barely has a character. Off screen, like, an entire cloning facility is established, and the Dalek's like, yeah, I did this behind your back, mate, soz. And then he's just like killed off in like the next scene, like when they find him, and then it's just a big dumb runaround where it's like, oh no, Dalek is doing it, but there's not enough time to have actual stakes because no one we care about is like in danger again. It's just a bunch of flashy Dalek action, which is like, it's not enough for me, especially for something where I want to see them taken seriously again and like allow them to be tense and threatening and creepy. It just feels like they're being devolved into, you know, the shouty boys. I just really don't buy that people, you know, he's had some good ideas, but I really don't think his execution and treatment of these classic villains has been the best of the modern era, or even particularly amazing. And of course it will come down to taste, because some people might just want the Daleks to be more action-packed, kind of practically nameless drones, but that's not that compelling to me. And anyway, sorry, yeah, what where are we gone? What are people saying? I think the next series should remove a fundamental aspect of the series, like how RTD killed the Time Lords. Maybe they could have the Doctor captured, have the TARDIS try and recruit humans to find him. Perhaps I and this is weird, is that like, you know, everyone wants something different from Doctor Who, and my kind of perfect Doctor Who right now would basically be like a fresh start where we just get the basics right. It's like, we have fun companions, an interesting Doctor, we have good, you know, adventures that are well developed, that are fun, with like, you know, fun characters, fun monsters, fun stakes. And I like ideas that aim to redefine the show or do something really crazy with it. And I think those are good every once in a while, but I think it also, I think that the Doctor Who is itself, as a show, it was designed with infinite potential behind it, and it was designed over time, became this thing that could be molded and shaped into whatever showrunner or person behind it, whatever vision they have through it. Therefore, Doctor Who always has the potential to be fresh, and Doctor Who always has the potential to reinvent itself with a new tone and a new aesthetic and a new Doctor and a new companion, to the point that I almost do feel like big format changing stories could work, but I'm not sure if they're even needed, like, at all. And I think there's this weird like association of like I think people do get. I do think it might be change. I do think it might be time for a format change, just because obviously we've been doing the whole Monster of the Week episodic thing for a while now. And I mean, Flux has been that change for now, but the way it's been executed, I'm not sure if this is the kind of long form storytelling style I'd like it to go for. This kind of throw all your threads in there, create loads of just what the fuck's going on questions, and kind of dangle all these like tantalizing mystery boxes. It's fun, but I think I do love having those kind of like self-contained adventures, and you know, they're allowed to be multiple parts long, however long. But I just think, you know, there's so much the Doctor Who can do right if it just tries to do the basics, that it doesn't necessarily have to come up with some crazy reinvention of itself. times are tough when you're citing the moon base as a good story. Hey, the moon base is fine. Like, it's got good atmosphere. It might be a bit slow in places, and the Cyberman's plan doesn't really make any sense, because why would they want to destroy all life on Earth? But I guess it's like petty revenge. But it's got some good atmosphere to it. It's got a fun little kind of like mystery that builds up and some tension. It's got a great design of Cyberman in it and some great Cybermen voices. It's got a very goofy resolution with like the boo, like Gravitron fucking solution, but still, the moon base is fine. I'd say. I zoned out near the end of Tenant era because of repetitive villains. Yeah, that did like. I do think the thing is that when you're using things like the Daleks, I think one reason when back when I was younger, people used to suggest they should give the Daleks a rest for a few years. I'd be like, no, why would they do that? But I think the only reason I was saying that was because it had been such a while since we'd had like a really good Dalek story that I was just kind of like, oh, fuck's sake, I hope they come back so that we can get a good one. Just because I think like, I mean, you know, Doomsday, sort of like Army Ghost and Doomsday is like, it's a pretty good story, but the Daleks aren't like a main feature in it. And then you've got Evolution of the Daleks and all that stuff, which is like, I might have to revisit that one, but I'm not as keen on that one. I think the Daleks start becoming a bit flanderized and a bit kind of caricatured and silly in that one. You've got like the big wide shots with like their bouncing waggly eye stalks. It's just very goofy. And I think when you get to like Stolen Earth Journey's End, people love that story, and I understand why, but I do have misgivings with how it's handled some of like the thematic ideas, and especially the solution being kind of reducing the Daleks to like a joke yet again. And then it's like Victory is okay, but feels more like a stepping stone. Asylum was like a bit of a letdown for me, and I think it's kind of continued in that fashion. Although I mean I rewatched Into the Dalek recently, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I remembered. It worked for me a lot more as a story. I just think it wasn't the kind of Dalek story I wanted to see at that time. The first Dalek CE, like Christopher Eccleston Doctor episode, is the best Dalek episode to date. Yeah. Like, in the modern series, I think I prefer Power as an overall story just because it's longer. I think, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I would like Power. I love the way the Daleks are characterized in it. I love that it's a story that has a really great characterization of the Daleks. That could be a story. Without having to make it, you know, a big heavy, it's post-Time War and you destroyed and and then it's like, I'm just like you, which is all great stuff in Dalek itself, but it's like, I think it's nice that we can have a story with the Daleks that is you're my mortal enemy. It's like, but Doctor, aren't you a bit like a Dalek if you really think about it? Which I think is why I didn't like Into the Dalek at the time. I was just a bit like, can we stop with the whole the Doctor's just as bad as Daleks like thing? Because it's sort of, I get the point, but it feels a bit redundant at this point. And you know that they're allowed to be creepy and menacing without stepping into that territory. Like, I'm not saying it's not good stuff. It's just stuff that I think is kind of had its time, and it's now time for a different kind of Dalek. I'd say it's even time for Nick Briggs to step down from voicing the Daleks, because he has a very specific style of voicing the Daleks, which is good, but it's become the default voice now, and I think I really do miss like some like the more like Peter Hawkins-esque delivery and just how different some of the early Daleks would feel, like making them feel less like a caricature and more like an actual weird race, like it. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just going off a bit, aren't I? I think the biggest waste was making a new Dalek design just for them to be killed off in 10 minutes by the RTD era Daleks. Is that Revolution you're on about? I just hate seeing the Doctor as a god through time rather than a character with flaws, wants, and stuff. No, I mean, yeah, I do. A lot of that stuff is the stuff that I definitely, it exhausts me by the time I get to the end of the Davies era, and it's the kind of thing that I've been wanting the show to get away from. And I think I like that Chibnall got away from it a bit in this first series, but he sadly gave us a really uncompelling, is how I'll put it, Doctor to sink our teeth into, which then gave the whole series this era. It's like this weird lethargic, not quite right, not quite finished, too many underbaked elements feel to the whole thing, where you're just a bit like, oh, what is this? It's like bland kind of Who by numbers that isn't really, it's not really giving me anything new to sink myself teeth into. Let's see, what have we got? What do you think about RTD's comments on a Marvel-style Universal Doctor Who? I think I did talk about this a bit in my RTD like announcement video, but I think it depends. When I see all the Marvel shows getting announced, especially the new ones, there's a part of me that's like, God damn, this is, as someone who's not into Marvel, like this feels like there's so much, it's a bit oversaturated, it's a bit exhausting to keep up with. However, I can't lie that if you are a Marvel fan, it must be really quite exciting to know that, oh shit, like X random property is getting like a new show or a new lease of life, or oh shit, they're gonna pick this thing up and do something with it, or oh, there's this whole new show for me to explore. And there's something about the idea of, what if we did just explore characters from Doctor Who, and you know, because like I thought the Sarah Jane Adventures has been a wonderful show, and there's that thing of like, oh, you know, there's certain people and bits that'd be nice to have a bit more of, or nice to be explored a bit more. Oh, see what happens there. I don't know whether or not that will happen, if we will get to them, like those kind of shows, or if there could be no spin-offs, there could be merely one or like a limited amount. I think the issue is it just depends on how carefully they're handled, how they're written, because like it would be lovely to see some old Doctor Who characters, old actors given a chance to come back. I would love to see, just someone give Paul McGann something to do, please. That man is so lovely, and most recent, like not long ago, he was talking again about how like, yeah, well, I'd love to do the 60th, you know, if they want me, like they just have to get in contact with me. And I'm like, oh, just give this man another chance to be on screen, like doing some Doctor Who stuff, because he's wonderful. And I just feel like the longer we leave it, you know, Paul's in a very fortunate position in that he, of the, I guess, quote-unquote classic Doctors, he is aged very well. You know, obviously he's sort of one the most recent / one of the younger ones, but still, like, he is like, I'm pretty sure he's in his 60s now, and he's aged very well, and he could very easily step back into the part without it feeling like, oh, we're looking at an older, balding, grey Doctor who clearly doesn't fit in the costume anymore, kind of, my immersion is slightly shattered. Like, Paul could step back in and he could do it perfectly. And I would like to see, it would be nice if we could explore some of those things, but I just don't know. It just all depends on the execution, and I don't know if we will. So I hope that answers your question. What else have we got? RTD's whole every single Dalek got destroyed, oops, never mind thing got old fast, because it made you feel like there are no stakes because they'll just be back. Yeah, I agree, and I think that's why, like, we need to have, these days we would need to have gaps between Dalek appearances. I remember the season finale of Tennant era that had a load of Daleks, and I was like, I'm out. I'm gonna assume that's like Stolen Earth Journey's End. In the classic era, there were so many Dalek voices. A few even sound like Zippy from Rainbow. Yeah, that's Roy Skelton. I like the different styles of voices, and I do like that too, just because. And this is something that I think has been lost with the Daleks, and Genesis, as good as the story is kind of to blame for this, is that the Daleks changed from being, I mean, well, to be fair, it was almost after their first story. They changed from being a race of once humans that, through a war and mutation, retreated inside these sort of semi-life support, semi-protective cases, who became kind of like bitter and hateful and kind of programmed out emotion and stuff, which is a very interesting concept, to being then a kind of a genetic creation, like a weird genetic creation, which kind of then it loses like a sense of identity from each of them. They feel more like an army built thing, which is, you know, as like a weird space virus. That's kind of how was it David Whittaker or Dennis Spooner who wrote Power of the Daleks? Whichever one of those did, they wrote the Daleks with a very specifically kind of like manipulative, like spreading bacteria kind of thing, field, where their only goal was to just dominate and wipe out, which I think is also scary. But I think they end up getting turned a little too much into these generic shouty boys that kind of feel like all interchangeable and all kind of clones, and I think, especially when they are then caricatured and made out to be a bit silly, it starts to conflict a bit. Like, you'll have, on one hand, you have a Dennis Spooner, Whittaker, whichever type classic story in which the Daleks have less of a personality, debatably, or less individuality, and yet have a very clear, cunning, manipulative personality, and kind of play the long game, just building up their numbers until they just break out and take over, because their only goal is the destruction of all that isn't like them, which I think is interesting. But obviously, that then there's not going to be much of a dialogue with the Daleks in that case. On the other hand, it's like, I think the modern era tends to kind of, they're not quite as black and white, no pun intended, as that. They're more so, they're kind of like this weird, awkward in-between, where they're kind of, you have some that are meant to be personalities, but then, like, they're still these weird genetic-y, like, creation, clone things, and then they're a bit goofy, and then, so I'm just like, vomiting ideas at this point, but I think I do miss that idea behind the very original Daleks that I think did get lost over the years, and I think is something that perhaps almost due to the new series making them, well, yeah, because you have like the Dalek in Dalek, which it becomes a character, but at the end of the day, that was a lot more of that was like a survivor of the war, and I think part of the implication is always meant to be that they were like a mass-produced armies of Daleks for the war. That's why they look like the bronze tank kind of thing. And on the other hand, by the time you get to Parting of the Ways, all those Daleks are slightly insane and really twitchy and kind of over the top, because they're these impure clones that have been built through tons and tons of like human corpses, like recycling and breaking them down to find the perfect bits to clone into new Daleks, which means they then literally hate themselves and are kind of like even more on edge and angry and weird than ever. And I think they kind of, it almost feels like when they then brought them back again, they kind of, you know, they've still got the tanky props, they've still got the mindset of how they've been writing them, and I think it almost feels like they forgot some of those details about the mass producibility or the impurity, and the Daleks continued being the over-the-top kind of shouty, almost slightly campy boys in the modern series, when they would be a lot creepier if they were allowed to be just a little bit toned down a little bit, either a little bit more kind of like this bizarre, unstoppable force, or a little bit more like cold, weird kind of individuals, like locked away in these, like, I don't know, I'm not quite sure what point I'm trying to make actually at this point, but hopefully it makes sense to someone. Let's see, Whittaker wrote Power. Cool, thank you. Destiny is what ruined the Daleks, bringing Davos back, making fun of them not being able to climb stairs, referring to them as robots. I can see that too. I think considering obviously season 17 was a pretty had pretty high viewing figures and is almost, despite the fact it came at like the end of Tom's tenure, I think it's almost the template of what audiences began to think of as Doctor Who, which was cheap, slightly campy, running up and down corridors, sort of dodgy monsters and shouty Daleks, Davros. And I think definitely like Genesis introducing Davros, he's a great character, but then for the rest of the Dalek stories, and it's kind of Destiny is to blame for bringing him back, it turns into Davros and his shouty henchmen rather than the Daleks being kind of characters or a force themselves. That they feel like robots. Doctor Who theme as Belgian jazz is a mood though. What, Doctor Qui? Voyage dans la TARDIS. Is that, if that's a Bill Bailey reference, then well, I hope it is. I really don't like Adams as a Who writer. City of Death was a fluke. I mean, like, I don't mind him because I like his humor. I don't necessarily mind him as a Who writer. I think I'm of the opinion that, like, Series 17 is very naff in a lot of ways. But if I watch it understanding that that's what it is and taking it as, like, this was Doctor Who, not taking itself particularly seriously, not a lot of budget, kind of fluking itself, like, very... I can not mind it. I haven't gone through, like, with a fine, tooth and comb over every season 17 script to say, well, this bit of dialogue is, expositional or bad, or this scene is padding, or, this character bit doesn't make sense. But, this is, I think obviously I made a tweet recently about people conflating personal taste with criticism of Doctor Who, and I think one thing that's really common is that people have a tendency to criticize the program if it deviates into a tone in which it's not taking itself entirely seriously, or if it's being a bit goofy, which I do understand, and I think how clearly the intent of it supposed to be goofy comes through. How clearly it comes through is I think, like, quite a determining factor. I think, like, when you've got a story that's tonally confused, being goofy is an issue because it kind of betrays other ideas and other things that the story's trying to do and set up. But when you've got, like, season 24 and story like Paradise Towers, which some people hate, and I don't really get it, because Paradise Towers is a ton of fun, and it is very goofy, but there are still a lot of fun moments in it. I like how it's like a bit of a laugh, like everyone just looks like they're having a good time. It's like, I've said, it's like the 60s Batman of Doctor Who season 24, and Paradise Towers especially. I love how, like, Clive Merrison is clearly cracking up anytime he's trying to do a scene with Sylvester McCoy. He's so over the top. I think Richard Briers is he gets a lot of hate, and when I hadn't seen the story in years, so when I saw him doing his, like, granddad zombie impression, I was a bit like, what is he doing? But then I was like, nah, I'm gonna enjoy this. I'm not gonna go, this is ruining Doctor Who. I'm just gonna enjoy it. I don't know why I keep channeling Matthew Toffolo when I'm doing those bits. But yeah, like, I just think there's a lot of fun characters. It's clearly making fun of itself. It's clearly a bit satirical. Like, Paradise Towers isn't an awful story because it's not boring. It's not, like, conceptually devoid of creativity. It's not even, like, structured that badly. Like, it's a bit of a naff resolution. Like, they just kind of lead him into a room and blow him up. But, like, it's a fun story, and I think that's where I also then feel conflicted talking about Flux, because that is another example of a fun story, I suppose, so far, in that it may not be the best quality. I mean, I'd have to go through, because I'd probably still argue that Paradise Towers has maybe, like, better pacing or some more creativity than Flux in areas, perhaps. But Flux is, so far, it is fun and it is turn off your brain entertainment. and it is a bit silly. I think people, but I do also think Flux does feel like at times it is trying to present itself as more serious than Paradise Towers ever did, and that's where the tonal kind of whiplash begins to become a bit of an issue, because it's like, are the Sontarans meant to be quite ruthless and quite threatening as they are portrayed at some points in the episode, or are they meant to be actually quite goofy and easily defeated as they are portrayed in other points in the episode? And so when you get people who complain that like the kind of people who like love Flux but then will complain that Paradise Towers is like a terrible story, I just don't understand, because it's like, surely they're kind of the enjoyment you would get from each is kind of the equivalent. Do you not like Paradise Towers purely because it doesn't take itself entirely seriously, and therefore it's easier to make fun of? And I think that is one thing, that whenever the show doesn't take itself seriously, it feels like more fodder for people who aren't Doctor Who fans to make fun of the show. And I think that's an insecurity that a lot of Doctor Who fans do have, especially classic fans, knowing that the show was regarded for so long in the public conscious as this embarrassing relic, and this, it wasn't until New Who came along and changed it. And even then, people will go, "Oh, well, I only like New Who. That Classic Who's still awful." I think for people who have this kind of fear of someone not taking Classic Who seriously, or someone writing it off as naff, any story that accidentally exposes that potential naffness or accidentally leans into that, I think is just seen as like the worst thing ever, or kind of unforgivable. I think it's kind of like, what are you doing? And I've gone through it. I remember rewatching a while ago, like Fear Her, and at the time I was like, this is kind of all the Chloe Webber, all that stuff is her on the bed. It's kind of is weird and a bit uncomfortable and a bit like, this is a bit naff. And I understand that weird fear feeling, that kind of thing of. And it happened with Doomsday as well. When I first rewatched Doomsday, I think not long after Series 11 came out, I remember kind of the scenes in which the Cybermen have like broken into people's houses, and like the family are there like scared watching TV, like, oh no, there's a Cyberman. And like when you're a kid, you're like, oh my god. When you're an adult, you're like, this is quite corny actually. But that's still a well told story, even if it is a bit corny. And it's, I guess it's going to be different for every single story, because every single story is going to have its own potential tone and things that do or don't work. But I do think that's where a lot of that hatred of anything silly or naff comes from. It's the idea that Doctor Who is becoming the thing that people can make fun of, is becoming the thing that everyone always fears it would be, or everyone always judges it for being. And at the same time, I do understand the idea that like a thoughtful, emotionally resonant, compelling, scary script might leave more of an impact on you and actually give an audience more to think about than a goofy, fun, who gives a shit script. But that doesn't necessarily mean that a goofy, fun script isn't going to be, is going to be bad. I mean, what are people saying? Wait. I'm the only one finding strange that there is only the Sontarans and Dog who know and act on the Flux. I feel like there should be more people from the whole universe coming together if they knew. That is a point that I was thinking about, where it's kind of like the Lupari ships were designed to resist the Flux, so like, and maybe we'll get answers, but like, how did they know the Flux was coming? How long did they have to prepare? Like, how do you design something to resist the Flux? Like, what? How do they know what it is and how to resist it? Like, what? And then it's like, how doesn't anyone else know? How? And the Sontarans like took advantage of it, but like, if this is a universal scale thing, what's going on? And that's the kind of the Chibnall issue of, the more you think about something, the less sense it makes. It's the same as the start of Revolution with getting the Dalek into out of the van, where none of that opening makes like any sense if you actually think about it. Why if like because what is it? a company comes to clean away the remains of the Dalek, and like the woman who works for Joe Patterson is like, just well, it's not, we don't know she works for it yet. She's just like, oh, just take it, and like, how's your mum? Get a drink. And then we see his pictures of his mum in the car, who's like presumably sick or something, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to this random tea place. Can you fill my cup of tea up? Oh yeah, because she isn't even like, get a drink. He's like, oh yeah, I'll probably get a drink on the way home. So at some point, I guess maybe she then communicated with someone to get a fake tea stand set up so that the woman could poison the tea and then steal the Dalek and take it to thingy, what's he called? Baskin Robbins, Jack Robertson. But then it's like, if they're working together anyway, and if she was in charge of cleaning up the thing, like, why couldn't she have just given the Dalek straight to him? Like, why did it have to be like, why did someone then have to die, create a trail, like, that can be, my son hasn't returned home, actually, what's going on here? Like, what? And then it's like, then you go, why did they need the Dalek thing in the first place? Because the actual drones, the security drones, use absolutely no technology from the Dalek remnants anyway, aside from the basic shape. Because especially when you consider the fact that, like, first of all, they're not fitted with the extermination rifle. And like, what other parts of the Dalek collects in, like, resolution? Like, it collects, like, the extermination rifle, and, I don't know, does it collect, like, an eye stalk and a plunger or something? I don't know, it collects some things. But it's never specified what specifically is used from the Dalek remains to then make the Dalek drones. Because they have an entirely different set of weaponry. They've got arsenal weaponry. They've got like tear gas and the sonic thingy, and they can't even fly, can they? Like, what else do they do? Do they shoot water as well? Maybe. And it's like. So they went to the effort of killing someone, obtaining Dalek remains, bringing them to Leo, so that Leo could go, oh yeah, I'll copy the vague shape, I guess. All of this stupidly put in place just so Leo can be like, oh yeah, and I found some traces of goo and cloned it, and now I've got a full Dalek baby, and off screen it turns out it's created an entire clone. Like, none of it makes any sense. None of that makes any sense. Sorry, I went off there, but that's... I hope you see what I mean. As far as I'm concerned. Will this go up as a VOD? VOD. I think it will. It should do. It must have been around a while for 7 billion ships specifically designed to resist it to be built. Yeah, like, exactly. Like, alternatively, could have taken a photo. Yeah, they could have taken a photo of the Dalek. They probably had video footage of it, surely, at some point. I mean, it wiped out an army base, like... But yeah, like, I don't remember where I'm going with this. I mean, okay. Like, I've been working on a story. I had a little idea for, like, a Doctor Who story. I've been wanting to write something Doctor Who related for a while, and I've had some concepts, but I've always never known, like, I've never really tried writing a script. I've never even written, like, a full story before, I think, and I'm always a bit like, how would I actually approach this? Like, I struggle to know what I'd fill it with, especially because I want it to feel satisfying too. And what I've come up with is a story that I think it's wacky, it's over the top. It's more so fun than meant to be scary. But it does have at the core of it some kind of thematic concept and idea behind it. And it does have stakes, and it does have characters that kind of, like, develop a bit. Like, it's nothing crazy. It's not like this isn't like the most amazing character study episode ever, but I hope it's a bit of fun. The kind of the idea I'm feeling out. And I think, too many people conflate the idea of, Doctor Who, I think, can do less scary and sillier or weirder stories as long as it it has like that good structure, engaging characters, fun dialogue, and like interesting ideas. I mean, it's very much, I've taken heavy inspiration from like season 25 and 26, a little bit of season 24. I think I've said it in my tweet. It's very much kind of, the theme is like Greatest Show in the Galaxy meets Paradise Towers meets The Happiness Patrol, with like a sprinkle of like a few other bits and pieces from Who history in there. And yeah, if you guys want me to like explain the premise, I could do that. So I mean, let me know. I do just need to, like, my throat is about to die, so I might need to get a drink. So I'll just let's just change this to say like. All right. Yeah. If you want to hear my story, let me know. But I'm just gonna get a drink. All right, I'm back. Hello, Ian. I'm presuming that's a certain Ian from the railway. So, nice to see you here, joining me in the middle of a rant. One thing that disappointed me in the Davies era, I remember watching the BTS and seeing something cool and scary in the concept for an episode, but then got binned for being too scary. I mean, I like things being scary. I do think it's a difficult thing because it's like the way you experience things as a kid is so different to when you're an adult, and things that scare kids, things can scare adults that just don't scare kids at all, and things can scare kids that just completely unfaze an adult. And I think that Doctor Who, you never quite know what is really going to freak someone out and what won't actually faze a kid at all. I think, like, as a kid, it's like, you forget, it's been a long time, but I'm forgetting just how intense kind of anything remotely a bit scary looks like. It's like, the world is just so much bigger and scarier, and kind of, it's that feeling of, when like you wake up at night and it's dark and you see a weird shape in the corner of your room, and for a second you're like, what the fuck is that? And you're like, oh wait, like a piece of clothing was just kind of falling in a way that looked like a weird like face was staring at me, or a little monster. It's that, and I think that's like when you're a kid, it's like permanently you're stuck in like, I don't know what that is, what is that? And so if you see something a bit scary, it's not just like, oh, there's a guy in a suit, or oh, there's a picture of a monster. It's like, that's an image that's burning into my head and may even come back to haunt me in my dreams, or will haunt me. I'm thinking about it as night, and then suddenly your imagination goes wild, and you go, oh, what if it's under the bed? Obviously it's great being a kid, but I think like it must be quite hard for adults to try and judge what they should put in. I think it's good for the show to try and be scary and tense. But it was because this is something I was watching a video. I might even might even like record, or we could take a look at it a bit. But I think it was really interesting watching a lot of old Review of Death. Review of Death, which is a show / now a podcast by Matthew Toffolo and Billy Garrett John, who I think Billy's got his own YouTube channel, and Matthew famously has used the YouTube channel Batman March. Despite although I am obviously one of the more bigger critiquers of the Chibnall era, if Billy or Matt happen to see this, I'd like to say I've been watching you guys for quite literally years. Matt especially, I started watching in like 2008 or something. Your work and your views on Who was always very inspiring to me. I very much looked up to you both, and I felt and agreed with a lot of what you guys used to say. And I think it was really interesting me revisiting some of the old videos they did, where they did things like how to fix Who, or like looking at like the good and bad of like new Who, in that kind of mid Moffat point where it was like the Moffat era had started to show some cracks. It kind of hadn't played out as smoothly as the Davies era, and I think because like it was only, we hadn't had like another taste of what Who could be like, we were both a bit kind of like, I don't think we were really quite sure what to make of like new Who at that point. And it's interesting that a lot of their criticisms tended to be things like it's too broad and stuff like, oh, they're not taking certain things seriously enough, or like Moffat's writing jokes that are a bit too winky and kind of kind of undermine the show. Like a lot of the stuff about like, the TARDIS noise is due to like the brakes being left on. That's stuff that's like effectively harmless, but it does kind of get under the skin of like a Doctor Who fan who's like, I just want the show to stop taking the things that I love and making a joke out of them. I think because it makes you feel like the show isn't taking itself seriously. When I think overall the Moffat era, as much as it did do those jokes, it knew when to take itself seriously, or would take itself seriously to like great effect on occasions, or on the right occasions. Obviously, I don't think any era of Who is perfect, but I think the Moffat era isn't as bad as people make out, although it does have its flaws. And I think like as well, hearing them kind of critique saying stuff like they need to kill a companion, which became such a big kind of like meme over the Moffat era of, you just need to kill a companion, kill the companion, which I understand, because at that time Moffat had kind of almost developed a bit of a trope of it felt people began picking on this idea of his companions don't get proper deaths, or his characters don't get proper deaths, which there is some annoyingness to how some of those things were executed, but I think it's really mean-spirited to go in with the mindset of this character who's meant to be like an audience identification figure, who we're meant to care about and invest in, like has to suffer, can't have like a nice end to their arc. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to kill a companion to great effect, but I think going in with the mentality that purely killing a companion will make like the show scary or make it better is very mean-spirited, and it's sort of the kind of thing where that will only work if like it's really earned, and it then becomes like, you can't treat it like an Adric death, because whilst that's a bit impactful in the moment, by the next episode they're like, it's fine. Or like, I know, even like Katarina, I don't think they dwell on Katarina much, do they? Or whoever else dies. I think it's kind of, and it's interesting how those kind of points got like hyper fixated on, and they're even dredging up like posts from like the social media and complaining like the social media is way too broad, when it's just kind of, that's all the social media is. That like every social media is like horrifically broad these days, especially, and the fact that this, I think the flaws of the Chibnall era have been so much more egregious than the flaws of the Moffat era, and yet what's been really interesting for me is, despite how harsh people like Billy and Matt were on the Moffat era, is how comparatively tame and forgiving they've been towards the Chibnall era, especially Billy. Like, I like both of you guys, in case you see this, but I do just find it a bit interesting how I know that Billy is quite positive and quite supportive of the Chibnall era, and it's not. I don't want to take that away from it. I don't want to take away someone's personal enjoyment of something, but it just strikes me as weird when then people if Billy's the kind of person who then wants to use the argument of, well, if you're complaining about this thing, then surely you must want to complain about this thing too, where it's like, he wrote recently about how people complain about the Centauron's not being serious, like, look at Lynx and his little flag, he's also silly. I don't know why I sounded like Gareth from The Office just then. Anyway, but yeah, he's making that point, and I'm like, okay, if you're allowed to use that, I should surely be able to say, like, well, if you're, criticizing X, Y, and Z of the Chibnall era, or no, not criticizing, if you're praising X of the Chibnall era, or implying people don't like it because of Y, surely I should be able to use this thing your view on, like, this episode, or your dismissal of this episode, and kind of say, aren't you also sort of going back on your word? Aren't you also contradicting yourself to an extent? Again, sorry, I didn't mean. I'm just kind of like venting at this point. I didn't mean to. I don't want any of this to come across as like antagonizing or like I'm trying to push a conflict or trying to like interrogate the guys. I'd honestly love to have like a discussion with Billy and Matt if I was ever able to. I doubt I will, but I think they are, because they were the voice of authority on Who for me for quite literally so long before I then was forced to develop my own kind of independent school of thought almost. Yeah, I'm not saying that I didn't have my own independent feelings, but I think the way I consumed Who pre-Chibnall compared to the way I started consuming Who post-Chibnall, or like after Chibnall started, has just changed completely, because it went from being a show that I know I enjoyed, but that I didn't really know what did it for me. And so I would cling on to these weird superficial things like, oh, it needs be more serious, kill a companion, Dalek should do X, Y, and Z. And then kind of actually going, actually, no, like, the reason why I haven't been connecting with the Chibnall era, is due to like fundamental issues in the conceptualization and the execution of like certain characters or certain plots or dialogue or even the direction. And it's crazy how many parts of the Chibnall era did see a downgrade. And then that really confuses me, because from what I understand, people like Billy and Matt, I think Billy especially, like, studied film and television at university, which I did as well. And I remember watching the Chibnall era before I kind of knew about things like directing and cinematography that well, kind of going like, why do I feel lost when I watch this? Why do I feel like suffocated and stifled? And I kept being like, I feel like I need a different shot. I can't quite tell where the characters are. I feel like I need a wide. And it's something that I think is, I think both has gotten slightly better over time, / I think bothers me less now, because I understand how directing works more. But it's, I find it weird when people like Matt and Billy go, the direction has been perfect, it's been great, it's the best the show has ever looked. And I'm kind of like, the effects are definitely good, and the anamorphic lenses do have that generically cinematic quality, and there's even sometimes maybe some good like lighting going on, but I just struggle to see how they can make a sweeping statement like, oh, the show's the best it's ever looked, it looks amazing now, the direction has been so good, when it's like, but has it really? Because the direction comprises not just the generic optical qualities of the lens they use. It defines the way scenes are assembled and framed, and how items and objects in the scene are framed, and visual clarity and storytelling and angles, and it's about how you cut between these shots and how you don't cross a line, or how you convey certain ideas. Like, it's so much more than just whether it looks pretty or not. And I'm not saying, I don't want to imply that Billy and Matt don't know that, but it's the fact that I've rarely seen them discuss stuff like that when they talk about the direction's so much better now, or and like it, and I think where it gets really egregious to me, again, I'm sorry, I'm going on a rant about two people who I literally love and whose content I watch all the time. But the way it gets really egregious to me is when people like Billy and Matt will talk about, disagree with people who critique something, but not really actually, they dismiss it and they write it off. They go, oh, how can people be criticizing the direction right now? It looks amazing. And it's like, I don't know, maybe you should listen. Like, it feels like you haven't actually listened or acknowledged the some of the arguments people are making in that regard. And then when they make, if the comments are made about like, oh, the only people who I haven't seen disliking it are the kind of people you'd expect not to dislike it, or saying stuff like complaining that people now have a problem with like the era of the show, or kind of, like I said, writing off things like oh, I think people didn't like X finale because it just wasn't as big as stakes as the other one. And I think it just kind of, it really like paves over and like dismisses and ignores like the actual discussion and criticism that people want to happen. Like I think the Chibnall era has been pretty shocking in times, but I'm also very thankful for it because it taught me so much about it seeing something I love presented in a way that did so little for me and left me so unsatisfied, caused me to really kind of start going like, why didn't I like this? Why don't I like these characters? Why doesn't this Doctor feel like the Doctor? Like, what is missing from this companion Doctor dynamic that I like? And I literally didn't know at one point. And that I had like vague ideas when I was talking about the show. I was like, oh, some scenes the execution felt a bit off. Like a bit should have been more exciting than it was, but it kind of wasn't. Or like, oh, this bit it was weird how something like it takes you away. The plot was kind of building up a lot of this intrigue and interest, and then suddenly the revelation is just like the Doctor monologuing and remembering something for a few minutes, and then turning around and like being like, "Yep, that's the answer." And at the time, I was like, "Right, so is that just like a working theory?" And it's like, "Oh no, that is the answer. It is just the solid tract. It's just this thing she's pulled out of her head that it shattered my immersion in that episode." I was like, "I'm really struggling to buy into this concept as a real thing at this point because it's just been pulled out of the Doctor's head at random, and I don't like it's I can't immerse myself in that. And so I am very thankful to the Chibnall era because it gave me a passion to learn more about storytelling and Doctor Who, and to really explore more of Doctor Who's past and figure out what I like in Doctor Who and start dreaming up what I'd want to do with Doctor Who far more specifically than I ever had before, to the point that I'm now literally in the process of wanting to write a Doctor Who story. I've got a full idea. And I would love to see better discussion about the show. I think people are so concerned with winning that they forget to just talk. Like, even though the Chibnall era has been particularly egregious at times, that doesn't mean that there's not so much that's fun to dissect and discuss and go like, oh, well, why doesn't X work? Or what happened here? Or, why... and it doesn't have to be mean-spirited. I mean, I think the issue is obviously not everyone wants to engage with it on that level too. You get a lot of people that are just dismissive in the opposite way, that are just like, Doctor Who, that was bad, or that was good, or that people will just be very dismissive, and it's why seeing episodes like something like Boomtown or The Long Game, which isn't the most earth-shattering episode ever, but is like they're both very well-told stories, I think, and very competently put together, even if they're not amazing. And like people like take issue. Like I used to have this. I remember back when I kind of would look at like series 1. A lot of the Doctor Who series, I think it's quite common to kind of to have this thing of, oh, it's only ever been like half good, half bad kind of thing. But I think prior to Chibnall, it's more that most of the time it'd been like half like really good, half kind of okay to quite mediocre. I think there's few that were ever like awful, aside from like certain choices or decisions that I perhaps like would take issue with on like more of a personal taste thing. But it's like, an episode like The End of the World isn't the scariest, tensest, craziest Doctor Who story ever. It does have it's got a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but like it's an alright, like it's alright. Like, this is the thing, I think most of the episodes we've had in the past that are like more so mediocre, are still probably better constructed than the vast majority of Chibnall episodes, because it's just like a different ballpark entirely. And I just think my feelings towards Doctor Who's really changed. I think I've softened a lot more, and I feel like I've come to kind of be like, Doctor Who is allowed to be more than just one type of super tense, super scary story. I think it's great when it can be, but I think Doctor Who is allowed to be lots of things, and I think as long as the characters are compelling, the interactions are fun, and there are some interesting ideas or like some good structure going on, then that's all you really need. Like, I don't know. The worst crime Doctor Who can probably commit is being boring, and I think that's one of the main reasons why Flux has been received as well as it has, is that it's managed to avoid being the worst of Chibnall we've seen before. And I think it still has some of like the tonal problems, but I think it does avoid the complete tonal whiplash that you get from something like Orphan 55, which has a very, very silly script, at least it seems to me, and yet the production design of that one is mostly gritty and grungy, and the music especially and the direction is trying to make you take it seriously. It's got pacing problems too, obviously, but then it's like, then you're left confused in this episode. It's like, how seriously am I meant to take this episode? You've got all like the "can someone please shoot me," which is like, am I supposed to laugh at that line? How am I supposed to feel? Or like the whole sudden reveal that like, oh, my mum never came to any of my birthdays, and it's like, oh yeah, and she gave me the name Trixabel, which is like, that's meant to be a comedy line, but it feels super out of place in that episode, because you're like, how am I meant to be taking this story? Like, I don't know how I'm meant to engage with this. So yeah, it's I don't know where, again, I just talked for ages there. I don't actually know where my point went, but yeah, I just feel a lot of people, I feel like there isn't a lot of productive discussion right now, I guess, in short, in the current era of Doctor Who. It's a lot of people objecting to the basest stance that people have on the era without taking time to actually listen to each other. Anyway, have you ever read Giga Who's blog? Their critiques of Chibnall era are unique but concise and offer a very interesting perspective. Yes, I have read Giga Who. I think, Giga Who has a lot of good stuff. A lot of interesting observations. Very, very useful for me as well, like when it came to like understanding what, like highlighting parts of the episode that I was like, oh yeah, that explains why that felt so off to me, because sometimes it's not easy to necessarily work out on a exactly why something isn't working to you. Hi, my name is Ben. Is that Ben from work? I don't know. Hi, Ben. People who say the Chibnall era is the best the show has ever looked after we had Rachel Talele generally boggles my mind. Yeah, because I do understand. I think sometimes there were some parts where things could look a bit cheap at times. The odd shot could look a bit cheap in the not Chibnall in Moffat or Davies era. I think the start of like the Saigon two-parter, that kind of weird white wall room. I mean, I guess it's meant to look a bit like a kind of weird, like raw ISIS video, but I do remember at the time seeing that and kind of being like, that looks a bit naff. This looks a bit naff. And obviously, the for the first season, obviously, well, Russell T Davies is all in standard definition, so you've got all the limitations of that, like the things overexposing, a lot of overlit scenes, things overexposing. And then you've got the Moffat era, and they're still using what I guess is like circular lenses, which produces that very crisp, clean, but not very traditionally kind of cinematic look to the video. It's a lot more clean and kind of crisp and digital looking, and has a lot less of like the artifacting. And I think, as in the unique artifacts to anamorphic, which is what they're using right now. And I think that I remember whenever I was watching the Chibnall era, I'd be like, God, why does it look like, God, it really looks like a movie at times. Like, back when it was all new and glossy, and I hadn't yet put together that I did feel choked. I just remember kind of still being like, God, really, there's like a weird movie look to it, which was a nice surprise at the time. But when you compare, again, even in the Davies era where they're working in standard definition with like a limited, like f-stops or whatever, maybe even like a color bitrate or whatever I think, color gamut. It's like you can compare the composition and the editing and the lighting of and the constructions of scenes. Like compare, for example, the scene in which the Ninth Doctor talks to the Margaret Slitheen, whatever she's called, and there is some very clear direction going on here. As they're talking, there's like a sort of, it's like a dolly slash pan, or like a kind of dolly pan combination where it kind of, or it could be like a, oops, hit my microphone. It could be like a track that curves where it kind of pulls around to kind of slowly reveal more of the Doctor's and more of Margaret's face. It's kind of showing where, you know, where the action is going to be taking place. The whole scene is lit by that kind of candle-lit warm quality that gives it this warm, intimate feel, and kind of gives this life to their eyes because they're kind of sparkling, it's glinting in their eyes. And as the conversation becomes serious, more and more serious, more and more intimate, we move in closer and closer with each of their shots mirroring each other. And it's very clear what the scene's doing. It's pulling us into this tense, intimate conversation between two people with an aesthetic and lighting that complements what's going on. And even juxtaposes the serious nature of their conversation, because you know, and then you take a look at, like, I don't know, Yaz having tea with her sister in Can You Hear Me, like the depression celebration meal or whatever they're having, where it's like we have like two shots, there might be like one more, and they're like framed so that it's like loads of, like, Yaz's and her sister's face are like right towards the like right and left sides of the screen, like there's no room in front of their face, there's loads of room behind them, which creates this weird kind of like, and I can't tell if it's intentional, I can't tell if it's meant to look like that because we're meant to feel a bit like uncomfortable or confined, or if it's just part of the weird trait that I kept noticing happening, a lot of people just kind of not really like respecting screen direction and like shoving the characters' faces into like the far side of the screen for some reason. And it's just like maybe at most 4 shots, I think just 2, back and forth. There's no sense of intimacy. The lighting is just kind of brown and whatever. It's just it's generic emotional pad music again, I'm pretty sure. And I'm pretty sure there's no music in the like the Boomtown scene. And it's just, one feels like there's a clear vision and idea in it, and each shot is doing something new and bringing you further in. And the Yaz one, it's just like, how do we shoot a conversation between two people? I don't know, shoot one side and then shoot the other side. Shot, reverse shot. It's not that pretty, it's not that interesting, it's not that kind of... And maybe the intention, maybe it was meant to look bad. Well, not bad, but maybe it was meant to look moody and drab and dark, but... oh yeah, the whoops, I need to remove the text. Let me just do that. Flux talk. Yeah, so... it just is... I need to get a drink. Yeah, I just feel that yeah, it's just untrue that the show is the best it's ever looked right now, and I think there is very legitimately often a lack of creativity, and at times even a a worrying lack of like visual clarity to the overall presentation of the show. I mean, it was less noticeable to me in the most recent ones, so it could be that it's just like better now, but I do hope we leave the kind of the grittier, grungier aesthetic of the Chibnall era soon for something that's more expressive or more interesting or just prettier to look at, or that complements the wacky tone better. Anyway, I've been talking for ages. Does anyone have any questions or things to share or discussions? Or do you still want to know about my dumb Doctor Who story? Just waiting. I don't know what the delay is between me talking and between comments arriving, so... Is anyone else annoyed that Swarm so far is just creepy man invades the Doctor's personal space and walks around her teasing the finale again? Yeah, it is a kind of like... And that's what I can't tell. I can't tell as well, how compelling is this mystery actually? Or is it simply that Chibnall's kind of doing the, what I'm going to call the Brendan technique of storytelling, of showing us kind of like bizarre imagery that is related somehow, but really non-specific kind of what's going on. And just kind of dangling threads and ideas in our face that are kind of so like, what the fuck is it? I just want to know that we end up like really investing. I mean, I do think Chibnall has been good at kind of at creating some of these mysteries sometimes, but then they're always really underwhelming in the end, because it is like the Kasavin. It was kind of crazy being like, what is this thing? Like it's coming through the. It seems to have come from a different dimension. It's like breaking into the TARDIS and like interacting with our world in a weird way, and like the Doctor talks to it and it's like, oh, you don't know who we are, we're more than you could imagine, or something like that. And then they're just like kind of like a non-entity by the end, and they haven't come back yet. And so I'm like, unless the Kasavin are gonna reveal to be like the dog people somehow. Or like, because their heads looked kind of similar in shape. I don't know. Unless the Kasavin are going to be the Fluxy guys, like the Ravagers. I don't know. It's this irritating thing of something big that's important that you should know. Like, oh, this big weird person who knows the Doctor. How do they know the Doctor? How are they this powerful? What is going on? And it's like those are like questions we'd like to know the answer to, but how compelling are they actually as a mystery? Is it just a big kind of, yeah, just a big ongoing question, a big flashy mystery box? I guess it depends kind of, I suppose there's multiple ways to construct a mystery, but yeah, it's yeah, I think I've finished on that thought. God, my throat is... How do people talk for so long? My throat is rubbish. To be fair to Power of Three, though, it did run into a lot of problems because of the actor who was cast as the Cube Man. Apparently just being like a nightmare to work with on set, refusing to say his lines properly, and they had to kind of rewrite it using whatever footage they have of him to patch it together. I mean, I don't know how much better the original solution really would have been, but... It all depends on the finale. I rewatched Fugitive recently, and it's a total nothing burger in retrospect, and that was exciting on airing. And yeah, that's like... No, I wasn't... I don't know if excited... Okay, excited. I think I was trepidatious or nervous with things like the Timeless Children, or the Roof Doctor stuff, Fugitive of the Doom, because like... With Fugitive, it was this kind of, yeah, there was like a compelling mystery, but then like, well, okay, how compelling was it? there was the main thing with like, okay, there's something more to this Ruth person who. God blimey, Jesus, a bunch of fireworks going on right outside my door. Holy shit. Jesus Christ. Anyway, like with, that's really distracting. With Fugitive, there's a kind of compelling mystery behind like, oh, who is this person? This person who's been living on Earth for however many years, but apparently has a whole secret past. Like, what? But then the other stuff that's going on with Captain Jack is just a massive, like, shit, how do we get the companions out of the plot for a few minutes? I don't know. They just get teleported on there and he just talks to them and then that's it. And then the actual Jadoon stuff is like, oh, they're a bit inconsequential. There isn't really like a main story. Like that story is like one big. Jesus Christ! Can you guys hear these? Fucking hell! Like Fugitive, is basically one giant like mystery box chase that is teasing an answer that isn't actually like a full kind of story with like a beginning, middle, and an end. It's merely like a stepping stone chapter setting up more stuff. And yeah, that's why I agree with you in that it's a story that is like engaging and makes you go, oh wait, what's going on when you first watch it, but then you revisit it and you go, actually, now that I know the reveal, there really isn't much to latch onto here. There's not much of like an emotionally compelling story. I think it's the same with like The Timeless Children. The only reason why I was engaged in The Timeless Children is because I was like, oh, are they going to fuck with the Doctor's past? Are they going to do some stupid, the Doctor was like someone else before story, and then they did, and I was like, and it's like, my tension and my stakes shouldn't come from how, like, disinterested and pissed off am I going to be by whatever they're teasing. It should be, oh, I care about the characters in this story, and I want to see them prevail, or whatever the fuck. Which is why in my story, working title, I don't know. I've got a few, like, customer service might be one title for it that's really bland, though. I might call it Care and Repair, because that's the name of the insurance I used to have to sell at PC World, and this is based on working at PC World, somewhat, slightly. My story is set in the Ultimart multi-department store, which is a name that still brings me a lot of joy to say out loud. I love how ridiculous that is as a name. It's basically a gigantic... I was going to make it a mall originally, but I felt like that didn't quite work for the story I was trying to tell, because you have like lots of stores in a mall, and I kind of wanted it to be more like departments. So it's kind of like a department store with like the essence of a mall. Gigantic and decaying, sat on a planet, maybe in the core, in like a little star system that's at this point hardly anyone's there, because the Ultimart department store basically pushed out all small businesses or smaller people until basically no one was in the system anymore. Then it's just the gigantic Ultimart. And hardly any customers are dropping by anymore, and the shelves are getting bare, there's hardly any stock. Yet, pressure is on as high as ever for the sales colleagues that are trapped there to keep making their targets, and it's only getting more and more ruthless. It's like, every day by day, less and less customers. And if you don't make your targets, people are relocated, but after they're relocated, you never see them again. And even though there seems to be new shipments coming in for something every day, there's just the stock isn't there. Like, and basically all the workers, because there's like literally nothing else in the system, they haven't got the money to travel out of it, or the means to travel away from it. There's nothing on like the planets themselves. They're just like barren and dead. Therefore, their only option is to live and to survive is to work at the Multimart, to stay and live at the Multimart. They're basically trapped there. So the Doctor turns up because finds he's got an order. He's got this order for an item that he swear he can't remember ordering. He's like, I don't remember placing this order, but apparently I've got it. The characters I was going to have, the main players, were going to be working names. There's going to be 3. The main 2 that we meet, one is I think I've called them like Carlos. I was just like, I don't know what to name them. Something vaguely not quite pedestrian sounding, but not, I don't know, not like Chibnall sounding. There's going to be someone called Eva, and then there's going to be like Carlos's brother. And Carlos's brother isn't hitting his target, so he gets relocated. And meanwhile, Carlos and Eva are kind of somewhat opposed in their philosophy. Like, Eva is keen to keep hitting her targets and keep the sales up, because the better she does, the more the company will reward her and give her a slightly better quality of living. And she thinks, very much like, yeah, I'm self-made, I'm out for myself. If screw everyone else, if I keep doing the best, then I'm going to rise up. And Carlos is disillusioned with it, because he knows what things were like before. A long time ago, his family had a little independent shop that crumbled due to people like Multimart, and his only option there is to work for the company. And now that his brother's gone disappearing, he's even more disillusioned than ever, and so he's keen to find out what the fuck's going on. And so the way it would progress is that basically the doctor would be like, oh yeah, companion, go off and enjoy yourself, have some fun, see what you can find. I'm just gonna go find my order. And the doctor would end up talking to Eva, and Eva would be like, well, I'm afraid your order's in the restricted zone, it seems, and I'm not authorized to take you down there. She's like, you'd have to speak to a manager. And the managers I want to be, if you've ever seen like a creepy, like uncannily realistic animatronic, like an animatronic that's so close to being lifelike, but just kind of wrong and rubbery, there'd be these weird, creepy, uncanny, inhuman, they would be androids, but that would be more of like a reveal for a bit later, but they'd just feel weird and kind of rubbery and dead, with these creepy, like, unbreaking smiles across their faces, like smiles that the longer you look at them, the less like a smile you swear it looks. There's just this aura of falseness around them, this air of deception and like inhuman, disgusting, patronizing kindness to them. And they're very like condescending, and they're like, oh no, you can't go down to the restricted zone. So then the doctor's like, all right, well, I think I'll just go down there myself. And so the doctor and Eva, the doctor decides to just break ahead into the restricted zone and get down there himself, and Eva's like, the hell are you doing? And she kind of reluctantly chases after him. Meanwhile, the companion would end up running into Carlos, where she'd start, she or I don't know who the companion is, they would start to learn more of like the context of the place. They'd be like, well, yeah, like my brother's disappearing. People have been, every time they're relocated, we just never see them again. And, there's nothing for us in this place anymore. Yeah. And, and kind of, there's a lot of stuff that would be set up that I've kind of not talked about, just could be too much to kind of go over. But the companion would then agree to help Carlos see if they can sneak into the manager's office and find out where his brother might have been sent. I mean, again, if people, no Autons, no, they're not Autons. If people want me to continue explaining the concept of this story, like, let me know. But that's like all the setup, is that the doctor's got an order he doesn't remember placing in this weird, creepy, decaying store where people are disappearing for not hitting their targets, and the managers are all like these creepy, inhuman, like, seem like they're kind of like robotic or like not quite right. And yeah, the companion, meanwhile, is trying to help Carlos find where their brother's been taken to, and it all comes together in there's like there's a reveal of who what's going on, who's behind it. There's a little betrayal in there. There's lots of setup and payoff. There's a fun a very Greatest Show in the Galaxy inspired climax in which the Doctor basically just causes the whole place to kind of explode and collapse like in on it. Like he destroys, because it's like crumbling and rotting. He basically finds a way. I've figured it out, but he finds a way to set off a little explosion at the bottom, not just with a bomb, because he's not Jodie Whittaker, to bring the whole place crumbling, whilst also having he saves everyone at the same time and defeats all the bad people in there. And it ends with the Doctor being like, right, I'm gonna have to nip back and make this order for myself, because it's once he's gone through the events of the story, he understands, in order to set up certain things, I now need to go back and make the order. And that would end on like the cliffhanger. He'd be like, at the start of the episode, he's like, I've just got to run an errand, just got an order to pick up, and then the companion's like, all right, will it take long? And then like by the end of the episode, he's like, but I've just got one more errand. They're like, surely, Doc, like what could it be at this point? He's like, I've just got a little order to make, and then it kind of like shows the package, and the order is that he's ordered. The thing he's ordered himself is the item he basically needs to turn the plot around to save the day. Like it's I don't think it's so much a MacGuffin, because it's not like it doesn't instantly solve the plot, but it's merely an important part in him being able to get all the rest of the events into place that enable him to then take down the department store and free everyone. And so yeah, if you guys wanted to, but yeah, there's no identifiable classic villains in it. It's not like a return. There's no big reveal. It's entirely new concepts and characters. I think the only thing that could be, there's going to be some like security droid robot things in there, but I think the only thing that would be like, hopefully, like a memorable villain would be the managers, which is what I would call them. And yeah, they would, I think, you wouldn't be able to use them again, obviously, because they're like a one-time thing, kind of. Although you might be able to use their concept again, because I was going to have that. Oh, fireworks are back. I was going to have that they are an in-universe thing that is like they're not like a creation of the company. I'll clarify all that if anyone wants me to explain. But yeah, that's I guess that's almost like the overly long pitch / sort of setup for my story, called, I don't know, it's called Care and Repair, customer service. Maybe it's called Ultimart multi-department store, which is yeah, the worst name ever. Jake, check out BBC America tweet. There's a BBC America tweet. What? Let's have a look what this tweet is. Clownfish Dad of the Year? Or, oh. What? Hold on to your doctors, we're about to face the aftermath of the apocalypse? Is it that? Is that what are we on about? What? Right, I might head off unless people want to say, if people got anything to say, or people want to. I'll do a little, I don't know. Is there anything people want to talk about? Saying doctors. Oh, right, I see. Hold on to your doctors. I suppose so. Yeah, that could, I mean, I don't know, it could be, hinting at something. What have we got? We've got a bunch of stuff here. I don't know. Yeah. I joined just as you're leaving. Oh, I'm sorry, man. I won't leave if people have anything they want to say or offer. In terms of multi-doctors, I mean, here's the thing: how much should we read into this? Is hold on to your doctors just like hold on to your seatbelts or whatever whatever people say. Hold on to your hats. Hold on to your papers if you're 2-minute papers. Because, it could just be a really bad attempt at, a joke. But it could also be hinting. I don't know if I care if they're doing, a multi-doctor thing. I think, obviously if there was a weird, complete surprise, Paul McGann turns up, it'd be oh, that's fucking crazy. But if it's, if David Tennant turns up, it would be okay. I'm not as interested in that just because it kind of felt like a given / they've fallen back on him so much in this era. And then if it was just a completely new Doctor, I think I'd just be remember when stories were simple and focused? Do you remember when everything was an earth-shattering, universe stakes, lore reveal, crazy over the top? And I do like a bit of a crazy story that feels bigger than big, because as a kid it was always that kind of stuff would engross me. Something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is obviously a very silly, slightly campy story, but it was that thing of first of all, the entire Earth gets destroyed, so instantly as a kid I was like, well, no, you've got to get the Earth back, that's home. And then you've got the whole thing of there's a meaning of life, and the meaning of life might and then there's a giant computer was created, and then the Earth was a giant computer, and then Marvin being oh, what, you really want to know the meaning of life? I was a kid, I didn't know that I wasn't going to find out the meaning of life, but I was on the edge of my seat. It was so it felt like such a crazy adventure. And watching stuff I mean, even back when I watched Ascension, there was just a lot of uncertainty and excitement, I think, because we'd had this hint of oh yeah, here's a Cyberman back again. We've got Lone Cyberman. It's okay, they are actually doing something new and a bit more creative with the Cyberman. This is interesting. And oh shit, the stakes, the Doctor's on the bat foot. We now need to go to the future Cyber War. And then we get there and it's a shitty computer composite village somewhere, and it's a bit okay, this is now I have to buy that these are the last ever survivors of the Great Cyber War or something, even though they're just in a village somewhere dressed like people, and it's okay, losing my immersion a bit, but oh shit, already stuff's going down and we're flying away on spaceships. It's holy crap. And then suddenly it's stuff oh, there's a gateway, there's a big boundary. It's we can get through this. Oh wait, there's a gateway, what the hell's going on? And it's oh, and the inside of their ship nearly looks a bit TARDIS-like, and we're getting there and we're running away, and the Cybermen are in a pursuit, and it's a big chase. And then we get to the boundary, and it's oh my god, what's gonna... And then suddenly it's Gallifrey, and the Master pops through, and he's well, hey... And that cliffhanger had me going my god, what what are they gonna... I mean, at first I was what is the boundary? But now it's oh my god, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna imply that humans have been crossing over to Time Lord, and that humans became the Time Lords, which ironically is a far less annoying reveal, I think, debatably, than what we got. But yeah, it's I was... And all the Brendan stuff as well, because that had no answers in Ascension. That had just been dropped in there, and it's yeah, what is this? What is this? All this stuff of this kid who can come back to life, and then he's old, and suddenly his dad and his police person turn up, and they're young, and they sit in, and he's what is going on? And I do like when you have that sense of kind of confusion and larger than the universe, and holy crap, what great secret is going to be revealed. And the unfortunate thing is that because it's writing, and because we're merely just because we're merely some humans writing some stories or whatever the fuck, it's like we can't have, we're not going to have the meaning of life, and we're not going to have the great universal secret, and even in films like Treasure Planet or whatever, like, they're not allowed to keep all those riches. Obviously they get a bit. Obviously, there's a fitting conclusion to that story, but like, it's sort of there's always a compromise because we're merely human, and we don't have all the answers, and we can't necessarily. There are some things that we won't be able to conceive of or explain. And I don't know. I think, like, I can't remember how I started on this point, but I do just feel like there needs to be a balance. Like, sometimes I would also potentially do a story which had some kind of like crazy universe, kind of like weird mythos at the bottom of it, like, because I find that stuff kind of exciting. I actually do like the idea, as much as I often talk about how I would want to do a series of Doctor Who that just got the basics right and just gave us compelling adventures with, not a lot of fuddy-duddy, the great whatever, and the ancient, and the Doctor is angsty in the time, and all the... Like, I would love to get away from all that crap. At the same time, I don't mind the idea of telling a story in which, like, the Doctor, I don't know, does come across some kind of weird, insane villain who's got, like... who's, I don't know, searching for, like, the key to the center of the universe or something like that will, like... once they get there, they will discover something. And, the truth of those stories is always that, like, when they get there, what they expect to discover isn't there, and then it's, it's what we learnt along the way, or it's something else, or it's, Sally Avon was, Dr. Chronotis, which I do actually like that as a reveal, but it's, I mean, that's a really fun reveal. This thing, we're building up, like, the ancient destroyer of whoever, that, like, Sally Avon is hidden in Sharda, and then we get there and it's empty, and then it's like, it's the old guy. But I don't know, like, I think I'm at an age in which those kind of having a reveal that works thematically is probably more important to me than having than just having reveals for the sake of it, or having these stakes for, like, the sake of it kind of thing. Yeah. So I feel like I'm flexible in the kind of Doctor Who I'd like to enjoy or ingest. I think it's just a matter of executing it well, to be honest. Anyway. Last survivors until a later series needs them again. Yeah. I wonder if they will come back. Will you upload this when it's finished? I'm sure I will. I think it does it automatically, doesn't it? I had a similar idea to your Doctor Who story, but it was more tick aliens in disguise on an alien supermarket, apartment, slaughterhouse, moon. Yeah, I think that sounds fun as well. Would they be like secretly harvesting the humans or something? Like, what's your, like, rough idea for that? Because actually, I had another idea, a very similar idea to my supermarket one, or at least kind of similar in sort of like thematic and philosophical construction, in that it's it'd be a story in which the Doctor and companion arrive on this weird, like, colony that's segregated into like maybe 3 distinct colonies, where you've got all males, all females, and then, like, all older people. And each of the colonies is constantly fighting with each other because they're convinced each other is the main problem with everything that's going on right now. And everything in their individual little, like, colony bits is full of, like, propaganda and things, and everything in each one is adjusted to make each one feel like they're the victims and the other people are the problems. And they've been so caught up in all this stuff that they haven't questioned, like, wait, where's any of this stuff actually coming from? Like, we service and work every day for some unseen control, but, control has our best interests in need, and it's it's them, it's the X gang or the Y gang that are the real problems. And this is inspired by Facebook comment sections, because Facebook comment sections are fucking awful, because nothing ever gets done and nothing ever gets discussed, because everyone is too busy, being condescending and snide towards whichever demographic they view as the current problem. And everyone's always like, if an older person makes a point, a younger person has to be like, oh, you're a boomer, and then the older person has to be like, your generation doesn't understand, and then a man has to fight and it goes on, and it's like such pointless petty infighting when the only people with any real power are like, well, it's those that are rich and powerful. And the idea is that literally it's like taking kind of like the decaying superstore one. It'd be taking like the idea of this like weird capitalist kind of environment to like just a ridiculous extreme in which these creepy, I always imagine them as like a weird creepy like inbred like maybe like family like kind of semi-human species of people are behind it all. They've been literally orchestrating, pulling the strings, convincing all these people to fight together, because the more they focus on fighting with each other, the less they're going to actually catch on to what the fuck's going on. And the more effort they're going to put into working their lives away to then supply things for the weird, creepy inbred family at the top to make everything off of. And then, the Doctor and companion turn up are like, the hell's going on? They're constantly being chased and run around, and eventually when they get to the bottom of it, the Doctor's able to, orchestrate a thing that would... Like, the issue is obviously this one is very similar in ideas and thematic construct to the other one I did, where it's like... But this one has more of a... I guess it has more of like a volatile environment, because it's rather than sympathetic workers, although you do have opposing philosophies in my first script, rather than a group of sympathetic workers with like creepy managers, this would be much more of a, like running away from, kind of like how in Paradise Towers you've got like the Kangs and the Cleaners and the Rezzies, or how in Genesis you've got like the Thals and the Khaleds fighting, and neither group is like, in Genesis especially, neither group is necessarily like better than the other. They're both quite horrible and have people in them that are quite ruthless, and both have people in them that are quite good. And I do like that idea of just trying to make the point of like, if everyone stopped fighting for pointless differences and just like paid attention to who actually has any influence and power over people's lives, perhaps we'd actually get something done. But yeah, like that's, again, it's a very on the nose episode, and I don't have as much of a clear idea as how that one would play out in terms of like the story beats. I don't remember why I started talking about this episode, but yeah, like, why did I start talking about this episode? I don't know. That's another idea I had though. And I'm also, in doing this, I'm not trying to be some like smart ass edgelord and be like, ooh, look at me, I'm doing Doctor Who stories, but aren't they so clever because they're actually about this? It's more that I go, God damn, this thing has really irritated me, and I'm like, hey, what if I turn that irritation into like a Doctor Who story? Or like, yeah, what if I use my frustration at this thing to explore what it would be like taken to its extremes, and what it would therefore be like to thrust the Doctor into that situation, to make people, see different somehow, and to have a good adventure along the way. Like, and that's the thing, I don't know how on the nose these, like the idea of a decaying superstore that drove out all the businesses is very obvious what that's about. But I suppose it's something that probably could happen in space, in generic space. But it's unrealistic. It's like a heightened reality. But I would hope that I still structured it to have enough like stakes, emotional connections, and fun set pieces to be an entertaining story without you having to go, oh, this is a commentary on, like whatever the fucking hierarchy system in like gigantic corporations. But I mean, I guess yeah, it's another commentary on a gigantic corporations that basically wipe out independent businesses, I guess effectively reward people who become inhuman parodies and caricatures of themselves you are forever kowtowing to a higher power and worshipping and kissing their feet, and you're forever growing more and more distant from those who once who were once like you, who were once small young workers who were, just as naive and just as low down. And now, because you spent all your time obsessing over kissing the arse of some twat at the top in a suit, you yourself have become another twat in a suit who expects everyone to kiss your arse and becomes this weird inhuman, like, I don't know if I've just had bad managers, at least the places I've worked at, but like they never feel like real people to me. I was like, how can you be a real person? Because it's like, I don't see a person, I see like a facade. I see a weird, creepy, desperate to please and yet completely unfriendly and cold person, like a complete husk, a nasty husk who's devoted themselves to the corporate lifestyle and climbing the ladder and looking out for themselves. And I guess that's, I'm just venting my frustrations with that stupid shit and writing a story like, what if, rather than looking out for yourself and sacrificing your humanity, instead you were like fuck it, let's work together. Let's help each other. Let's be more equal. I'm not trying to say I know how the world's run, because obviously I don't, and obviously it's complicated, and obviously to imply it's as simple as working together is dumb. But the emotional philosophical stakes is basically that being more compassionate and caring and considerate of people and relating to people is more important. It should be more important than sacrificing your humanity and your relationships for the sake of appeasing a high god who may or may not reward you. And this is even making me think that I might make it that like Eva, the one who's keen to, I might make it that they were all related, because that way it could be that like Eva is kind of, Carlos obviously has a bit of a personal vendetta against the company because it wiped out his small business, but maybe Eve is of the opinion that like, yeah, but this small business was never that great. If we keep going, if I keep climbing to the top, then I'm going to I'm going to be rewarded for that. And maybe I've got a bit in there that she does betray, but maybe I'll do a bit more thinking and moving around. It'd be nice if that betrayal could actually like impact more than, because right now it only impacts the Doctor. It'd be nice if I could find a way to make that like really impact like the companions, like a proper treacherous scene in which, and maybe I need to make her journey different. Maybe I need to make it that it's like she literally goes so far that she almost loses who she was. Or maybe I need another character who's a representation of that. Like I love I just think that's such a fun, creepy concept, that idea of devoting yourself to and actually, because she, I mean, I have trickles of that in there, because she's very, I want to have that she's very blunt and kind of unkind and cold towards Carlos's brother, who is failing, because it's the case that this dude is a weakling, this person isn't going to help me on my journey, I don't need to look out for this person, because what's important is climbing the ladder and her growing distance from that sense of like humanity and compassion. So like, yeah, finding a way to really kind of like I'm gonna be spending a lot more time on it, but bringing all those points together to just make it really like emotionally resonant, I guess, and like to drive home that like that idea of selflessly looking out for yourself by kowtowing to someone else versus working together and being equal and compassionate kind of thing. Like yeah, that's the main philosophical stakes and conflicts defining my story, I suppose. Which I would hope is more than one could say for, like, I don't know, the Saranga conundrum. Because Saranga conundrum, like, what's, the stakes because there isn't even like, the Saranga conundrum could be about something, And I think you could probably draw some kind of theme, but there isn't really a theme. Don't underestimate small things. Don't if you've got a brother that like if you and your sister are fighting a bit, just like talk, bro. Don't hide your medical conditions. That's about it, isn't it? Anyway. But 13 said Amazon good system is not the problem, you are the problem. Yeah, like that whole episode. I guess I've almost written like the reverse Kablam as well. Because I remember at the time watching Kablam being like, oh yeah, this is the Amazon episode, and being like, oh yeah, we're doing the whole Amazon is a worky bad thing. It's a bit, and it sets all that stuff up, and then at the end it's just like, actually this, and I remember just being a bit like, oh, what? I didn't like. Oh, you know, there's a part of me that was a bit like, okay, you know, very obvious social commentary here. But then there's another part of me that was just even more confused when it just went against that, and I was like, well, now I don't know what to make of this. Whereas, I would hope that my adventure managed to be fun without being battering you over the head with like the message. Anyway, yeah, my throat, it really is killing. So. And chat is quite slow, so any more questions? Any more questions, and if not, then I will be heading off. So I'm now getting caught up in replying to a tweet that someone's made at me because I'm petty like that. Well, someone's disagreeing that I said the long game is a better told story than Flux, which it is. So sorry, Wilfred Beaver. So I'm just going to ask, why do you disagree? Because having conversations about this thing is preferable to not. Because, like, yeah, okay, like, legitimately, what problems do people have with the long game? Like, I don't understand it. Is it simply that it's not the most amazing, over-the-top, scary Doctor Who episode ever? Because it's completely competent and well-constructed. Like, it has a bit of a thematic idea to it, even if it's not the best explored. It has quite a fun setting, I think, like a really fun little environment. It has good stuff kind of showcasing the relationship between Rose and the Doctor, especially in contrast to how Adam feels. It's like it very much shows you how far Rose has come. It's a really good measure for Rose's development and the development of Eccleston's and Nine's relationship throughout the series. It's got, you know, like characters that I can remember, even if they're not like the most amazing or memorable. Adam's decisions make perfect sense to me. Like, obviously he's an annoying. People complain that he's like an annoying character, and like whilst the performance is a bit stiff, like no, he's like, the point is that he's a dick. Like, the point is that he's a twat and he makes a bad choice. Like, that's obvious. That's the point. And like everything's, you know, things are set up. Like at the very start, they give him the TARDIS key. Very clear setup is that, you know, if you do find yourself getting freaked out, feel free to let yourself back in. He has that at the very end, where it then becomes problematic, because not only does him click it into the system reveal all the information that the editor and the JackWolf needs about the Doctor and stuff, which he was working with otherwise, but then it completely raises the stakes, because it's like, well, sorry bro, I've actually got your TARDIS key as well. Like, I'm not saying this is amazing. I'm not saying it's the best stakes. I'm just saying that as a script, it's functional in its setup and payoff and execution and structure. And it's well directed too. Like, I don't get it. Oh shit, sorry man. Stephen Mancy, if you have Twitter at all, feel free to like follow me or like send me a DM or something on there. I think my Twitter is something like @officialjackw or something like official @official_jackw. So feel free to send me there. I'd like to read it. But I do think it's about time to be drawing this to a close. So see you go. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Flyland. I'm actually about to stop. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. It's been fun discussing and venting a bit. I might edit. This should be uploaded, but I might edit some of this into like better videos. So yeah, see you guys. Tick aliens are disguised as customers that feed off the alien, including human workers' happiness and stress. I like that. That's cool. I like especially that they're feeding off of the like their emotions. I think there's a lot of excuse me, a lot of potential there. Anyway, goodbye, guys. I'll see you all another time.